Into the Backrooms. Book 1, Chapter 13. Welcome to the Secret Circus. I opened my eyes as the sounds of circus music filled my ears. "Where am I this time?" I muttered sarcastically to myself as I slowly began to move. My head spun as I fell to the ground again, lightheadedness pulling my entire body with it like an anchor to a ship. "Oh, fuck," I mumbled as my entire body felt completely disoriented. I looked around while being stuck on the ground and observed my surroundings. I was in the middle of a circus platform that you'd see the acts carry out on as part of the show. I slowly got to my feet again as circus music bounced around me, trying not to pass out or fall over again as I walked towards a locked box I saw the second I got here. "What's this?" I said curiously as I cautiously crouched down in front of the bright pink locked chest. "I need a key, don't I?" I said as I instantly lost interest in the mysterious locked crate. The circus music rose and fell in volume as I walked around the dimly lit big top circus tent. I scanned around the outer walls to see there was no exit to the outside, no doors, and no escape hatches. Shit, I have to get the keys or I'm stuck here forever. I stared at the bright pink box from halfway across the big top and shook my head. Fucking puzzles, man. I'm done with these stupid games. I just want to get out of this place. I looked around to see if there was anything else and gasped as I spotted a small blue key on a distant wooden table. "Yes, let's go!" I cried as I ran over to it. The circus music grew louder before cutting off sharply, causing me to stop in my tracks instantly. No, I'm not doing this. This happened last time," I said as I began to quickly make my way to the table with the key. My heart pounded as my arms and legs grew heavy. What the?" I mumbled as my entire body dropped to the ground. My ears rang as fresh blood filled my mouth, my hands and feet growing numb as my body absorbed the shock. Fuck, I said as blood sprayed from my mouth as I talked. My head felt heavy and was extremely sore. I slowly moved my hands and knees and coughed up a load of blood onto the concrete. The extreme force that had just pressed me down and crushed my internal being. My lungs burned as my arms and legs shook, not being able to hold me as they gave out, causing me to hit the concrete chin first with a sickening crunch. I cried out in pain as my vision waved in and out, the circus music slowly starting up again as I coughed blood onto the floor. What the fuck is happening?" I groaned as my chest heaved, my mouth filled with blood that dripped from my lips and ran down my face. My body was numb, and my entire nervous system screamed within me. "I just want that key, I want to leave," I cried as tears began to mix with the blood on my face. The circus music slowly reached its normal volume and the weight pressing down on my body disappeared. I exhaled, spraying blood all over the concrete again before I scrambled to my feet, trying to ignore the pain that enveloped my entire being as I stumbled over to the table. I grabbed the bright blue key and shoved it in my pocket so I wouldn't lose it. "I will get the fuck out of this place," I choked as I licked the blood off of my teeth and sprinted around the table, my target being the pink crate ahead. Sprinted for a moment, my entire body screaming at me to stop as I pushed myself to my limit. Stumbled forwards, almost collapsing entirely before falling to my knees in front of the pink locked crate. "Please, let me out," I said as I snatched the bright blue key from my pocket and jammed it into the keyhole. The box glowed before launching the key at insane speeds past me, just barely grazing my torso as it slammed into a metal support beam and stuck there. Oh my god! That would have killed me if I was any closer," I said, a look of pure shock still painted upon my face. I slowly got to my feet and listened to the circus music, waiting to see if it would stop again so I could avoid being crushed by whatever game of consequence this level was playing. I left the blue key where it was, knowing it was safe inside the metal beam before beginning the search for the pink key. After a few moments of looking around, my eyes fell on a green locked crate pushed into a corner. "There's more colors?" I said as I ran over to the green crate and tried to lift it up. My arms burned as I struggled to pick up the small green container before I gave up, the tendons and ligaments in my arms screaming as they barely avoided being torn with immense force. I stared at the green box with disgust, knowing I couldn't move it to where I wanted it, and knowing I needed more than 3 keys so far. "Fine, I'll play your little game," I said angrily as I walked over to a nearby dresser and began searching the drawers. I jumped as a small mouse leapt from the drawer I had just opened and darted into a dark corner a few feet away. Shit, I said as I took a deep breath. I opened the final drawer and gasped as I found the pink key. Yes! I cried as I instantly grabbed the key and slipped it into my pocket. Circus music slowed down before all the lights shut off at once, plunging the entire big top into darkness. Oh, no, fuck no, I hissed as the sounds of metal scraping against concrete reached my ears. My eyes darted over to a wardrobe in the corner, seeming to be one of the only nearby hiding places I could see. There, I said as I booked it for the wardrobe. The sounds of laughter filled my ears as chills ran through my entire body. Please don't be a clown, I thought to myself as I grabbed the wardrobe handles and pulled as hard as I could. No, I said as the doors didn't budge. The sounds of laughter grew louder as the scraping of metal began to tickle the back of my mind. Please let me in, I begged as fear began pulling me deep into the voids of my mind. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I dove to the ground, just barely avoiding a large silver axe as it smashed into the wooden wardrobe, splitting it completely in half. I gasped in pure shock before scrambling to my feet. Where's a hiding spot? I need a hiding spot! I cried as the sounds of laughter started to dig into my biggest fears. I need a hiding spot! I screamed as the silver axe swung down, just barely missing me as sparks exploded from the concrete floor. I began to run, my lungs burning as my body screamed for me to stop. My wounds from the previous injuries began to burn with excruciating pain as I pushed my body to its farthest limits. I jumped forwards, the silver axe clipping my left leg as I hit the ground rolling. I slammed into a table, the air getting knocked from my lungs as I gasped for oxygen. Oh, fuck! Oh, my fucking leg! Holy shit! I said as blood poured from the massive gash in my left calf. I whimpered in pain as my head spun. I don't want to die! I don't want to die, not now! I said as the laughter sounded from above me. I looked up and screamed as the silver axe came down on my torso, ripping my entire body in half. The last thing I saw before the mysterious shadow entity... Fuck, that's not what that says. Sorry. The last thing I saw was a mysterious shadow entity with no shape or form standing in front of me before everything went white. Segment 2. The Secret Circus. I awoke to the sounds of circus music once again, this time ready for what was going to come for me as I quickly got to my feet. My wounds and injuries had healed, but the gash from the previous level remained. The makeshift bandage barely holding onto my palms as it continued to stop any bleeding somehow. Keys. I need a pink key, a green key, and a blue key, I said as my eyes bounced from wall to wall, scanning every visible surface. I spotted the wardrobe from my last encounter and ran over to it, darted in the dresser next to it before yanking open the bottom compartment. Here's the... My words caught in my throat as I stared at the empty compartment with rising fear. It's not there? I choked as I looked around. No, don't make me find every key randomly, I cried as I got to my feet in a rage. I grabbed the dresser with both hands and shoved it on its side. My rage had taken over me. It hit the ground with a deafening thud as the mirror behind it fell, shattering on one of the dresser's decorative legs before dropping a bright golden key into the piles of shattered glass. What? I said, a look of curious shock painted on my face as I crouched down and picked up the golden key, moving the glass out of the way as I got to my feet. What, a golden one? What could this even be for? I haven't seen a golden crate, I muttered as I slung my backpack over my shoulder, putting it on the ground. Before sliding the golden key into the secret compartment in the second slot. I had no idea why, but the key wanted to stay in that spot, seemingly like it knew something I didn't. Green, blue, pink, and one other, I said as I began looking for the other keys. I spotted a red key on a table a few feet away and ran over to it. There's red, I said to myself as I began looking for a red crate. Spotted the green crate in the distance and ran over to it. Green key, I muttered as I looked around, spotting the pink key hanging from a hat rack a few feet to my right. I instantly grabbed the pink key and dropped it in my pocket, now having 2 of the 4 keys I needed so far. Green and blue, I said as I began observing everything around me. I walked over to the nearby desk and opened the top drawer. The green key was tucked into a pile of papers, slightly hiding itself in the mess of work papers and office supplies within the drawer. I grabbed the green key and slipped it into my pocket before turning to face the green crate. I have the crate, and I have the key, I said as I fumbled around in my pocket until I felt the shape of the green key. I slowly walked over to the green crate and slid the key into the keyhole, turning it inside until I heard a ding. I waited a second, hoping it would open, but it never did. Okay then, I said to myself as I walked along the exterior of the big top, spotted the red chest tucked under a tarp and ran over to it. "Red," I muttered as I grabbed the red key from my pocket and slid it into the keyhole. The red crate dinged and opened to reveal the blue key. "Yes!" I said happily as I grabbed the blue key and got to my feet. "I just need the blue crate, and then the pink one is last," I said as I began walking around the big top again. A shadow darted past my peripheral vision, and I quickly turned around to see nothing except a small stopwatch ticking down a single minute. "Fuck," I hissed as I watched the timer tick down to 50 seconds. I sprinted over to the center of the big top and looked around frantically for the blue crate. That was when I spotted a glimpse of blue on a balcony near the top of the circus tent. "You've got to be kidding me," I said as a feeling of dread rose in my chest. "I know the blue crate is up there, but I don't have enough time," I said as I slid the blue key into my jeans pocket. The timer dinged as it hit the 30-second mark. "I have to," I said dreadfully. Damn. My eyes fell on a thin metal ladder leading up to the balcony, and I quickly began sprinting for it. "I don't have time for this," I growled as I spun a full 90 degrees and grabbed the first metal rung of the ladder. I quickly scaled my way to the top and glanced at the timer. 10 seconds? I cried as I ran over to the small sliver of blue that was showing through the mess of furniture. I grabbed the blue key out of my pocket and shoved the toy box out of the way, spilling stuffed animals and bouncy balls everywhere. The timer dinged as it hit 5 seconds. "Fucking hell," I growled as I threw the tarp behind the blue crate. I fumbled the key before shoving it into the keyhole, turning the lock until it opened. A loud ding sounded in the entire big top, echoing loudly before dissipating slowly. "What? Why was it so loud?" "What does it mean when it's loud?" I cried as I ran into the ladder and began making my way down. I glanced at the timer to see it had reset to 30 seconds. "Yes!" I cried as I made my way down the 20-foot tall ladder as fast as I could. My left shoe slipped on the cold metal, causing me to lose my footing entirely. I cried out in shock as my arm strained to hold my entire body on the thin metal bar. My fingers began to slip as I looked down to see the timer hit 12 seconds. "I just have to fall," I said without thinking, letting go of the metal rung before realizing what I had done. I fell backwards off the ladder, my back facing the concrete below as I plummeted down. "Why the fuck?" I cried as I tried to turn myself in the air. My body hit the concrete with a crunch, sending waves of extreme pain through my entire body. The air was knocked from my lungs as I struggled to breathe. I turned to my body, groaning in pain as I watched the timer hit 3 seconds. "Please, I was so close," I whispered as I began to crawl towards the pink chest. My skin burned as it tore on the concrete from the friction. "Please don't do this," I cried as I army crawled as fast as I could to the pink chest. My backpack lay a few feet from the bright pink crate, and I knew I had grabbed the medicine pouch at one point. "Fuck, just let me get to the backpack, please," I whispered softly, pain and anguish filling my soul as the light slowly began to dim. The cheery circus music had diminished in volume as I closed into my backpack in the pink crate. My elbows burned as I scratched and burned my skin on the rough concrete. My back began to grow stiff as my body tensed up, my muscles not being able to take this much movement and stress after the fall I had took. My chest burned as my heart begged for oxygen. I groaned as I slowly got to my feet, stumbling towards the pink crate in my supply bag. I cried out as I fell forwards, landing on my stomach with a thump. I groaned in pain and got up again, my visibility slowly going dark as the lights inside the circus tent quickly turned off. Slowly turned off, my bad. "Please," I begged as I stumbled over to the pink crate. I fell to my knees and grabbed the pink key tightly as I reached for the keyhole. My head spun as I jammed the key into the lock and turned the mechanism 90 degrees. The chest dinged before opening, a bright light coming from inside the chest, as the lights within the big top itself shut off completely, shrouding everything except the chest in darkness. The sounds of metal scraping concrete pierced my ears as I winced in pain and grabbed the glowing item from the chest. I stared at it for a second before glancing behind me, seeing the faint outline of a massive creature wielding a metal axe. I cried out and rolled to the left. Oh wait, no, my bad, I jumped. The air left my lungs as pure fear filled. Let's try that again. The air left my lungs as pure fear filled my entire being. The faint outline moved closer before what looked like a massive arm swung forwards, bringing the axe with it. Damn, I cannot read today. What the fuck? I cried out and rolled to the left, the axe barely missing me as it smashed into the concrete, shattering the floor as cracked spiderweb from the impact point. "I think it's time to leave," I said to myself as I scrambled on all fours for my bag, making my way to my feet as I grabbed the backpack strap and ran. Immense amounts of pain shot through my entire body as I ran for the only other light in the entire big top. The sounds of metal scraping concrete filled my ears as I darted right, dodging another attack by the skin of my teeth. I inhaled painfully as I gasped for air. My chest burned as my head pounded furiously. Adrenaline filled my bloodstream as I darted left, dodging the axe again as the air of it coming down fast brushed the back of my neck. "A train?" I cried as I swung my backpack over my shoulder, the thin leather strap continuously falling from my arm as I ran. I grabbed the glowing plastic rectangle and swiped it through the card slot, turning the red light green as the protector gate swung open. I sprinted across the carpeted platform and quickly made my way into a train cart. "Go, go, 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 go!" I said with a sense of urgency, my eyes darting around in the dark as I watched for the massive entity that hunted under this big top. I gasped as the sounds of moving fast. I'll keep it real with you guys. I gasped as the sounds of fast-moving air sounded from behind me and turned around. The axe swung down quickly towards my head as the train car jolted forwards, shooting off into the darkness as the axe smashed into the last train car of the row. The entire train cart split in two as the loud shriek of rage filled the air. The sound pierced my ears, sending chills through my entire body as the cart rattled down the track. I inhaled anxiously as the cheery circus music sounded faintly in the distance. "Just let me leave this place," I whispered softly as the train car shot down a straight track into the darkness. The sounds of the The sounds of the small train wheels grinding on a steel track filled my ears as everything went white, the last thing I saw being a faint outline of a tall black creature watching me from a distance. Chapter 14, The Back Way. Why you should never visit the metro stations of the Backrooms. I woke up on a cold concrete platform to the sounds of a massive amount of whispering. I opened my eyes to see a dark and dingy metro station shrouded in darkness. The second I began moving, the whispers stopped. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing down the tunnels before disappearing completely. The sounds of wind filled the air as I turned around. A large tunnel lined with steel gratings sat in front of me. A long, seemingly endless set of tracks stretched into the darkness. I inhaled slowly, still feeling the pain from the last level's encounters as I looked around me. The metro station was dimly lit and smelled of mold and rot. A cold chill filled every tunnel, and a feeling of uneasiness filled the air around me. My heartbeat sped up slightly as the sounds of whispers started up again. I looked behind me to see a shadow dart into the darkness, my eyes only able to catch a glimpse of what it was. "Fuck. Who's there?" I choked out as feelings of fear and uneasiness crashed down on me. I stared into the corner I had seen the creature in and took a deep breath. "You know what? Fuck, just leave as soon as possible. That's what I've been doing, right?" I said to myself as I turned to face the tunnel. The sounds of wind rushing down the dark passageway filled my ears as a blast of cold air filled the entire metro station. I stumbled back as the wind almost knocked me to the ground and spun a full 180 degrees to look behind me. The wind continued down the tunnel, the sounds of quickly moving air sending chilling howls through the entire level. Man, I can't breathe. I'm sorry, guys. I might have to re-record because I'm anxious, actually. This one's a big one. It's about an hour-long read. It's about 12 pages, just so you know what you're getting into. And I'm getting into. Fuck, I'm gonna have to re-record tomorrow. "I want to leave. I need to leave. This level isn't like the other ones," I said as I rubbed my palms together, anxiety filling my entire being as I tried to warm myself up. I glanced around nervously, spotting a staircase in the distance leading down. "It's just a metro station. It can't be infinite, right?" I sighed. It might be like the others, though. I don't know. I don't know what to do, man," I said slowly as I stared at the staircase in the distance. My head pounded as a million Man, this is a deep read. This is what the chapters are from now on. They're long. They are long. This one level, 12 sublevels, about 13, 14 chapters. You guys are in for a treat this week and next week. I took a step forwards, the sound of my foot coming down on the concrete somehow amplifying itself as it echoed down the tunnels. I inhaled, trying to calm the feelings of unease uneasiness and fear that filled my entire being as I cautiously made my way down the dark concrete tunnel. It was cold. The sounds of fast-moving air reached my ears again as a powerful blast of wind pushed me forwards. I stumbled a few feet, almost losing my footing before grabbing onto an extremely rusty steel pole. I looked around, scanning the area for danger or other threats before slowly stepping away from the rusty support beam. I hate this place. Oh, fuck, I hate it so much. Jesus Christ, I said as I slowly began walking towards the staircase, my eyes scanning the darkness for threats. My backpack! I cried as I spun to face the place I woke up in. My backpack sat in the darkness, seeming to sit under a blanket of shadows as it laid on the concrete platform up ahead. Fuck, I said anxiously as I began speed walking towards my supply bag, my eyes darting around as I moved, scanning for any more of those shadowy creatures that I walked in on. I inhaled before leaning down to grab my bag. A cold chill brushed over the back of my neck before sending chills through my entire body. I grabbed my bag instantly and ran as fast as I could for the staircase. The sounds of faint laughter filled the air as my gym shoes slapped the cold concrete. I whimpered in fear as the laughter grew louder before stopping in front of the stairwell. The sounds of fast-moving air brushed past me as I darted forwards. Again, long read. Sorry, I don't want to use AI. Just doing my best, guys, okay? This is a novel I spent 3 years writing. I just want to get it out in the world because publishing fucking sucks nowadays. The sound of fast-moving air brushed past me as I moved forwards, my feet swiftly moving down each step until I reached the bottom, slamming my body shoulder first into the metal bar that opened the door. I fell through the doorway with a thud as the large metal door slowly slammed shut behind me, locking itself into the mechanism with a loud bang. I took a deep breath and scrambled to my feet, slinging my backpack over my shoulder as I slowly stepped away from the door. The sounds of laughter had completely stopped and the air was slightly warmer. My body shook with fear as I stared at the closed door with a sense of uneasiness. "Let me leave, please," I whispered as I stepped back one last time before taking my eyes away from the door. I turned around to see a massive, coolly lit tunnel with smooth white tile walls. A line of dark green tiles stretched along the center of the wall, following the tunnel as it went into the far distance. I took a deep breath in and looked at the walls and ceiling. Thin, rectangular lights that gave off a cool blue glow filled the tunnels with a soft white light. I tried to relax, allowing my muscles to loosen up, as I tried to drop the feeling of uneasiness that engulfed me constantly. "This level is different. I need to be more careful," I said as I slowly began walking down the cold, brightly lit tunnel. It was warmer before, but the temperatures kept changing. I didn't know why. The sounds of my footsteps were quieter than they were when I was in the dark and ominous abandoned metro station area I started in. I glanced around, staring at the walls as I walked down the long, cold tile-lined tunnel, towards the left turn in the distance. My head spun as anxiety fueled my inner thoughts. "What do I do? I've never been in a metro before," I said quietly as I turned the corner, stopping in front of a massive, white-tiled metro station. The lights buzzed, causing my brain to flash back to those horrible memories at the time I got here. The first day I got stuck in this place. How long ago was that? It had been at least a week. I slept when I had the time, ate when I had the food. I don't know where I am," I choked on my words, horrible memories of everything I had been through flooding my mind as I choked back tears. "I want to get out," I said softly as I looked around. A wave of cool air fell over me, causing my body to relax a bit as my thoughts dissipated. "Keep cool, stay calm, and you'll have better chances," I said to myself as I began walking further into the brightly lit metro station. Advertisement posters written in an unidentifiable language lined the walls, seeming to advertise things inside this place like almond water and things from my reality. I took a deep breath in and began walking down the long, endless corridor that was this subway station. I glanced to the left to see a hound sifting through a trash bin that had been knocked over. I froze in fear and slowed my breathing as I slowly slid my backpack down my arm and onto the floor. The hound snorted before jolting its head in my direction. It growled before dashing forwards at me at insane speeds. I grabbed my bag by the left shoulder strap and dove to the right, causing the hound to just barely miss me and crash to the ground. It rolled before scrambling to its feet again, continuing its chase for its new prey. "Why is there always something?" I cried as I sprinted for the ledge of the platform, planning to lose the hound in the pit that held the train's rail system. I jumped off the concrete platform and hit the ground with a thump, making sure to bend my knees to avoid breaking my legs before kicking off, my shoes scraping the back of the wall as I kicked off the ground. The hound made a sound that sounded like a howl mixed with a human crying out in pain, sending chills through my entire body as the hound leapt off the platform and hit the ground running. I darted left, throwing my bag up and over the ledge and onto the platform before jumping up and landing on the ledge with 3/4 of my body hanging off the ground. I inhaled painfully as I kicked my feet, trying to kick off the wall to boost myself up as the sound of the hound's feet hitting the ground grew closer. "Please," I grunted as I used all my strength to pull myself up. The hound growled before jumping towards me, sinking its teeth into my legs, and my right calf exploded with incredible amounts of pain. I cried out in pain as I kicked outwards, my foot connecting with the hound's neck, sending it flying onto the tracks. It yelped as it hit the metal beam at the edge of the rail and rolled to a stop in the center of the chamber. Fresh blood dripped down my leg and soaked the right leg of my jeans as I struggled to kick up over the ledge. This is 19 pages, by the way. I try to read all these in one go. I'll stop interrupting. Sorry. The sounds of the hound's clawed paws kicking off the concrete filled my ears as the hound landed on my back, instantly digging its claws deep into my flesh before biting my shoulder hard, tearing back as it ripped the flesh off my body. I screamed in pain and rolled to the side, forgetting I was on the ledge for a moment as my fingers slipped off the platform. Tears filled my eyes as the hound continued to tear into my shoulder with its teeth, soaking my neck and arm in red blood. My fingers just barely hooked onto my bag's shoulder strap as I fell sideways off the ledge. The hound yelped as I landed on top of it, crushing its body into the concrete as my bag fell to the ground a few feet away. I hit the ground next, my body rolling off of the hound's limp body as I hit the concrete with my left shoulder before hitting the concrete wall to my right. Let's reread that. I hit the ground next, my body rolling off of the hound's limp body as I hit the concrete with my left shoulder before hitting the concrete wall to my right hard. I groaned in pain as my blood slowly soaked the ground near my shoulder, my eyes locking onto my bag as it lay a couple feet away. My chest burned as my head spun from the amount of blood I was losing. "This is it," I mumbled softly as my vision blurred in and out. I stared at my bag as the hound stirred next to me. I groaned softly as I began to roll onto my stomach. The hound shifted, kicking its legs as it regained consciousness. I groaned softly as I began crawling towards my bag. The concrete and dust covering the platform the rails laid upon scraped my skin as I left a trail of blood behind me. The hound growled as it began to wake up more, increasing the sense of urgency I had to get my bag and kill the hound. I groaned in pain as my fingers grazed the bag, showing me how close I was. "Please," I said softly as I painfully strained to reach the bag. The hound snorted as it slowly got to its feet, trying to remember what it was doing down here instead of up where it was. I exhaled painfully, alerting the hound of what it was doing here as it instantly charged at me. I mustered all the strength I could and gripped the handle on my bag as I swung, the bag full of various supplies connecting with the hound's face midair, sending it flying into the concrete wall with a loud and sickening crunch. Blackish blue blood poured onto the ground as the hound lay limp across from me, the life in its eyes fading as its jaw fell limp. Its thin strands of black hair had fallen over its grotesque face as it lay dead at the base of the wall. I gasped for air as my head spun. The pain in my shoulders grew unbearable as my vision filled with blurred spots of color. I fell backwards, my body going limp as it shut down, my head hitting the track's rail as it all went dark. Segment 2. The sounds of wind filled my ears as the cold breeze swept over my entire body, sending chills through my left side. I groaned in pain and opened my eyes slowly regaining my senses. My shoulders stung painfully as I began to remember what had happened. "The hound," I said as I instantly threw my gaze to the area the hound had laid after I hit it with my bag. The flesh-covered carcass of the hound laid in front of me, its bones stained with blackish blue blood. I gasped in shock and painfully shuffled back as far as I could away from the body. What happened? What the fuck?" I cried as I stared at the bloodied, flesh-covered skeleton in front of me. "Fuck, something else is here," I whispered as I began to look for my bag. I gasped as I spotted a giant brick-sized rat sifting through my supplies. I held my breath as I tried to determine whether or not it was dangerous before slowly getting to my feet. "Just get that bag. It's not that hard. It can't be that hard," I said as I let my shoulder hang limp to avoid mass pain. The rat chittered loudly, the sound piercing my ears and making me jump. The rat froze, its head still in the bag as I stared at it with pure shock. It was about the size of a large brick and was covered in dark, matte black fur. Its tail was about the length of a number 2 pencil and was dark pink. It chittered loudly, its call causing more chills to go through my body. "It's just a rat," I said as I took a deep breath to calm myself. I took a step forward and reached for the bag, watching the rat carefully. The rat was completely still as my hand grew closer to the bag. I yelped as the rat shrieked loudly, piercing my ears as it darted away from the bag and towards my feet. I jumped up, barely avoiding its razor-sharp teeth as I stumbled forwards, looking behind me as it darted into the darkness. I inhaled deeply before grabbing my bag and looking inside. The stale bread I had was gone, along with multiple batteries. The med kit was covered in scratches and bite marks, and the roll of bandage I had was torn to shreds. "This stupid rat!" I said angrily as I tossed the shredded roll of medical gauze onto the tracks. The sounds of chittering grew closer as I once more froze in fear. "There's more?" I hissed as I struggled to avoid turning around. The sounds of hundreds of rats chittering filled the air as I spun around. About 100 sets of beady red eyes stared back at me from the darkness, waiting for me to move. I froze, staring at the horde in front of me as I held my bag in my left hand. I tried to breathe, but it caught in my throat as I watched the wall of eyes grow closer. The sounds of hundreds of these giant rats echoed off the walls of the subway station, floating down every tunnel as the horde continued to grow in front of me. "What the fuck? What do I do?" I jumped back as a death rat charged at me from the shadow-filled tunnel. I jumped up and grabbed the ledge as the rat clawed at my jeans. I kicked out, my shoe connecting with the rat's body with a crunch as my blow sent it flying out of the tracks. It rolled to a stop near the track's ledge before going limp. I groaned as I struggled to pull myself onto the ledge with my injury. The horde shrieked loudly, the sound sending a chilling wave. Damn, I cannot read tonight, bro. The horde shrieked loudly, the sound sending a wave of chills through my body as my ears rang. I yelped as the horde began to pour out of the tunnel, the mass of dark gray rats seeming to swarm as a collection of every rat on the entire level. No, I already dealt with a hound, guys," I cried as I swung my bag over the ledge. My chest burned as I pulled my body over the concrete ledge and onto the metro station's main level. The death rats poured out of the dark tunnel as I stared at the mass of entities in horror. I think I should leave, now," I cried as a large mass of deadly rodents scaled the walls and made their way onto the main platform. I sprinted as fast as I could forwards, the white tile walls and white lights causing my peripheral vision to become a blur of bright white. I cried out as the death rat jumped onto my back, sinking its teeth into my upper body, drawing fresh blood. I spun around, almost losing my footing as the death rat shrieked happily. The horde behind me filled the air with sounds of hundreds of bodies moving as a mass. The constant chittering and shrieks filling the tunnels was a deafening call of death. Fuck, I cried as I blindly groped around behind me with my left arm to get the death rat off of me. I grabbed the furry little bastard and ripped it from its perch on my back and threw it to the ground. It squealed in pain as its body crunched on the concrete, its tail writhing as it squirmed in pain before it scrambled to its feet and joined the horde again. "I need to get out of here," I cried as my eyes scanned everything around me. I spotted a metal door in the distance, the single light above it flickering on and off as it appeared to signal me to go to it. I glanced behind me to see a death rat leaping from a large white pillar at my head. I ducked, causing the furry rodent to go flying over me before hitting the ground, rolling with a sickening crack. It shrieked in pain, angering the rest of the horde as they began to move closer and target me from all sides. "Please, I just need to get to that door," I cried as the sounds of the horde filled the air as a deafening typhoon of shrieks and chatters. I kicked off the ground hard, the sounds of my heavy footfalls being drowned almost instantly by the massive shrieks and screeches coming from behind me. My eyes darted around, scanning for anything I could use to slow the entity horde behind me down, only to find nothing. "Please just let me make it out," I cried as I darted left, barely making my way around a thick white pillar as I tried to leave as many obstacles behind as I could. A couple of death rats that had previously dove at me screeched with anger as they hit the pillars and bounced off, hitting the ground hard before getting swallowed by the quickly moving horde. I cried out as the death rat's sharp teeth connected with my leg, tearing into my right thigh as it shrieked and chittered in delight. I spun in a full circle in an attempt to shake the creature off before speeding up, moving my legs as fast as I could in an attempt to prevent it from feeding on my flesh. "Get off!" I screamed as another death rat leapt onto me. sinking its teeth into my waist as it shrieked with delight. I darted left, my feet sliding on the cold, slippery concrete as I lost traction, sending me past where I wanted to go. The door grew further away as I hit the ground hard, the horde screaming with glee as they watched their prey fall to the ground right in front of them. I laid on my stomach, dazed. Moments later, a death rat leapt onto me, shrieking happily as it dug its teeth into my left arm. I cried out in pain and grabbed it angrily, holding it tightly in my fist before throwing it at the wall with as much force as I could. The horde slowed as the death rat seemed to decide who got the feast on me first, the two that remained on my body continuing to feast as blood soaked the areas around my wounds. I have to get away from them, I groaned softly as I watched the horde in front of me with fear in my eyes, a feeling of dread falling over me like a blanket. The door to my escape laid about 10 feet away, seeming to taunt me with every flicker of the light presenting the exit of the station. I growled in pain and slowly got to my feet, causing the horde in front of me to shift and prepare to attack. I took a deep breath in, watching the horde slowly inch closer before I booked it. The death rat shrieked, the deafening noise piercing the air and shaking the walls. My feet slapped the concrete floor as the two death rats that had been feasting just moments before lost their grip and fell, hitting the ground with a subtle thump before joining the horde again. I slung my backpack over my shoulder, securing it the best I could as I slammed into the exit door with full force, all of my weight crashing into the pushing mechanism as the door swung open. I fell through the doorway and instantly got to my feet, slamming into the door as the horde shrieked angrily as its prey went out of sight. The door slammed shut, shaking the walls as death rats slammed into the closed door with full force, clawing at the steel as they hissed and screamed with anger and frustration. I have to get as far away from them as I can, I said to myself sternly as I slid the lock down, hoping the door would keep them at bay for a while. Exit, I need an exit, it's too dangerous here. My heart pounded in my chest as the sounds of the entity horde sounded behind me, muffled by the steel door that currently kept them at bay. I looked around before walking down the dimly lit transport tunnel. Dust filled my nose as I slung my bag over my shoulder and set it on the ground. Almond water, bandage, I said as I tenderly touched my open wound on my arm. A flashlight, maybe some food if they didn't eat it all. My head spun as my heart continued to race with a boost of adrenaline. I grabbed the medical kit and popped the latch open, picking up the fresh roll of gauze before setting the med kit on the ground next to my backpack. I carefully unraveled the gauze and wrapped it around the wounded area on my arm. The exposed skin and flesh burned as the chemicals in the gauze cleaned out the bacteria currently infesting an open and vulnerable gash in my body. I repeated the same thing for the wounds on my leg, sighing as I realized there was nothing I could do for the bite marks and scratches on my back. Stupid rats, I muttered as I put what was left of the gauze back in the medical kit. I gently put the medical kit back in the backpack so I wouldn't lose it and grabbed the container of almond water. I unscrewed the lid and brought the bottle to my lips, hesitant to drink a liquid I found in a place that was constantly trying to kill me before taking a swig of the cool, refreshing liquid. My body relaxed a bit as I finished off the rest of the sweet and cold liquid. Even though this stuff could kill me someday, I gotta admit it's really good, I said happily. I closed the bottle before setting it in the bag, hoping I could refill it at some point one day. I grabbed the flashlight from the bottom of the second compartment and clicked the power button. It flickered a bit before powering on fully. For a moment I had forgotten about the death rats. I need batteries. There doesn't seem to be any supplies on this level, but hopefully when I get out of here I can find some, I said as I set the flashlight next to me on the ground, knowing that I might need it at some point later on. I searched through the bag for anything I could eat, only to find nothing. Fucking rats. Now I'm gonna starve, I said angrily as I listened to the sounds of the horde as they worked to destroy the steel door, keeping them from their current prey. I smiled at the thought of them all starving to death because I refused to let them kill me and zip the bag shut, securing everything within. I looked around, scanning for threats or hints of escape before standing up. I slung the bag over my shoulder and adjusted both straps so I could avoid any pain caused by the leather rubbing against my wounds. I held the flashlight tightly in my right hand and began walking calmly down the corridor I was in. There was definitely something off about this level, I said as I looked up at the ceiling while walking, staring at the rusted metal bars that supported the lights before returning my gaze to what was in front of me. Those rats, they acted differently, I said to myself as I scanned the walls as I walked, my eyes following the green tile line in the center as it stretched down the corridor and into the distance. This place is way creepy though. I actually hate it, I said as I glanced up at the small rectangular light fixture as it flickered before returning to normal. A cold breeze brushed past me, causing fear to rise up again as I turned around. The door I had escaped the death rats with was bent and covered in small holes and scratch lines. Fuck. Dude, that's solid steel. If they get out, I'm dead, I said sternly, trying to focus on managing my sanity and avoiding the feelings of fear and danger this place seemed to give off. The gash on my shoulder tingled as I turned back around, forgetting the cold breeze that I had turned around for as I began to walk slightly faster down the white tile hallway. Still can't breathe. You know, even though this place is always trying to kill you, it's honestly pretty cool, I said as I stared at the pristine white tiles that lined the wall. The lights above me flickered as a loud bang sounded from behind me, making me jump. That door won't hold much longer, I said nervously as I glanced behind me. Multiple death rats clawed at the floor as they tried to squeeze through the gap in the door frame. Yeah, it's definitely time to leave, I said as I began to run. My backpack bounced on my back as I ran, the materials inside becoming jumbled and shaken as I sprinted as fast as I could away from the door, knowing it wouldn't hold the angry horde of rats much longer. How long is this hallway? I cried as I stared down the endless line in front of me. Another bang echoed down the hallway, reaching my ears as it continued to float down the corridor ahead. I glanced behind me, the door just barely being visible now as I gained as much distance between me and the horde of death as I could. I'm screwed. I'm actually fucking screwed. What the I said as I gasped for air. My lungs burned as my legs grew sore, my feet beginning to grow heavy as I pushed my body to its limits. My head began to spin as my heart pounded furiously in my chest. I began to struggle breathing as my throat went dry. Please. Fuck. I don't want to die here. And this level is different. I might not have more than one life, I cried as my chest burned painfully. My vision began to blur as I began to lose consciousness. I'm so lightheaded with that. A loud bang sounded from behind me as the air filled with the shrieks of the horde. The sounds of the steel door scraping against the floor as the horde poured over it filled the corridor as I struggled to run faster. My lungs screamed as my vision became a blur. I glanced behind me to see a writhing mass of gray fur and red eyes quickly making its way through the hallway as it pursued its prey. I can't stop, I cried as I took a painful deep breath. The horde... Whoa. Hoarders? The horde's shrieks of rage and hunger echoed through the corridor, sending chills to my body as it pierced my ears. They won't stop, I cried as I began to slow down. My body grew weary and fatigued as I begged myself to go further. My body began to grow weak as I stumbled, starting to trip over my own feet as the sounds of the horde grew louder. I have to hide, I said weakly as I pushed further down the hall. A glimmer of hope rose in my mind as I spotted a T-shaped intersection up ahead. The hallways branch off, I gasped as I used the glimmer of hope to push for that split in the hallway. I began to regain my confidence as I glanced behind me, a sense of dread slamming into me like a city bus as I watched the horde shriek with excitement. I returned my gaze to what was in front of me and darted down the left corridor. My lungs begged for me to stop as I sprinted down the new path that laid in front of me. The chitters and shrieks of the horde grew quieter as I spotted a set of double doors in the distance. My only chance of escape is to hide, I said to myself as I panted, my body shaking as it begged for oxygen. I glanced behind me, spotting the front of the horde as it approached the intersection behind me. That horde is a threat, and the call of the horde they keep doing will attract even deadlier problems, I said confidently as I faced the double doors again. The horde shrieked as I pushed through the doors and into the staircase leading down to another station area. The horde shrieked in frustration as the double doors slammed shut behind me, giving me one chance of survival as the sound alerted the horde of my location. I'm going to reread that. The horde shrieked in frustration as the double doors slammed shut behind me, giving me only one chance of survival as the sound alerted the horde of my immediate location. It's do or die, I said to myself with a deep breath as I turned away from the double doors and faced the staircase ahead. Let's do this, I said as I adjusted my backpack and began deciding how I was going to survive this next challenge. Chapter 15. Why you should never trust death rats in the backrooms. The call of the horde. I quickly made my way down the stairs and burst through the second set of double doors at the bottom of the stairwell. I need to hide, now, I said sternly as the steel double doors slammed shut behind me. The shrieks and chatters of the horde grew quiet as I gained incredible distance between me and the horde of death rats. I glanced around nervously, realizing I was in another dingy and run-down, crumbling metro station, one that was similar to the one I started this mess in. Don't hesitate. Hide, I said as I reminded myself of what I had to do at the moment. The air was cold, chilling me to the bone as goosebumps spread across my arms and legs. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as an overwhelming feeling of danger and oncoming death hit me like a brick. I glanced around nervously before snapping out of it as the sounds of the horde slamming through the steel double doors echoed down the staircase and throughout the abandoned metro station. The doors slid down the staircase with a series of deafening bangs and crashes before slamming into the second set of double doors with a loud thud. They're here, I said as I ran as fast as I could towards a small room that looked like a control station for trains and the speaker systems that announced when trains were coming and leaving next. I burst through the aged and rotting wooden door and shut it behind me, turning the lock before climbing onto the desk. The shrieks of the hungry swarm of death filled the air as the horde dispersed, spreading out to search for their suddenly missing meal. I inhaled before climbing onto a sturdy shelf that was close to a large bookcase. Please hold, I said quietly as I climbed into the cramped space and laid on my stomach, using my arms to push myself back deeper into the shadows as the hundreds of singular death rats searching the station became visible through the small glass window facing the station. My breath caught in my lungs as a death rat suddenly darted its gaze directly at me. It chittered loudly, its eyes pointed directly at me as it watched the shadows I was hiding in. It couldn't have seen me, I hissed as I shifted my position. Fear began to crush down on me as the hundreds of death rats began chittering and shrieking, gathering together as they swarmed into one giant mass of writhing gray fur and razor-sharp teeth. It saw me, I cried as I began to frantically try and crawl out of the cramped space I was in. The horde shrieked with excitement as they quickly made their way to my location. Adrenaline shot through my blood as I squeezed out of the small gap, and fell hands first onto the desk. Old yellowed papers and random scrap metal fell to the floor as I fell onto the desk before rolling to the floor again. Damn, I said floor a lot. Old yellowed papers and random scrap metal fell to the floor as I fell onto the desk before rolling to the floor. The air was knocked out of me for a moment as I scrambled to my feet. The backpack on my back dug into my hips as I faced the horde, the only thing separating me and death being a thin glass pane. Fuck. I'm cornered, I choked as I watched the horde writhe and squirm in one place, as if they were waiting for me to make the first move. The air around me grew heavy as my glimmer of hope quickly... Damn. Guys, it's 11 o'clock at night. Please forgive me. The air around me grew heavy as my glimmer of hope shattered completely as the horde shrieks pierced the air. The glass cracked under the pressure given off by the call of the horde, seeming to be the cue for the swarm to attack. My heart jumped as the horde surged forwards, quickly advancing on the now weakened glass. I can't do anything, I choked as I watched the distance between the horde and the window quickly grow smaller. My eyes darted to the door as the shrieks of glee and pride exploded from the horde as it smashed into the glass. I took that as my cue and ran at the door with all I had. My body hit the rotting wood with full force, shattering the door into hundreds of wooden splinters as the horde filled the room behind me. The swarm of death rats shrieked in frustration as I sprinted through the remains of the door and towards the railway line that head to the tunnels. I can't stop, I said nervously as the sound of the enemy horde rushing toward me filled my ears. I refused to look behind me as my feet slapped the cold concrete platform. The tunnel in the distance was massive and shrouded in a black void of shadows. It's the only way out, I said as I tried to reassure myself that the tunnel wasn't the only threat at the moment. The sounds of clawed feet scraping concrete grew amplified as the horde closed the distance between itself and me. It's now or never, I said sternly as I changed direction and began running towards an area with more obstacles that still led to the tunnels. The horde shrieked with frustration as its prey continued to cause trouble in exchange for its meal. Now, I cried as I darted right, pushing over a large metal trash can behind me to slow the oncoming swarm. The horde of death rats shrieked angrily as they poured over the trash can, the sounds of metal on concrete being swallowed by the call of the horde. I ran as fast as I could, darting left and right as various death rats leapt at me, missing as I dodged their attacks. I can make it! I cried as I jumped over the ledge, landing inside the area the train tracks laid upon. The horde of death rats slowed as they poured over the ledge, not expecting to have to make their way down a 5-foot drop. I grabbed my flashlight from my back pocket and gripped it tightly as I approached the pitch-black tunnel. The shrieks and chitters of the swarm of entities behind me echoed through the tunnel as I continued to run. "I can't stop," I said as I gasped for air. My lungs burned as my legs grew weak and sore. My heart pounded furiously as I glanced behind me, my eyes meeting those of a death rat that had leapt off the waiting platform at my head. I just barely avoided it, clawing my eyes out as I ducked, my feet stumbling over the track as the death rat squeaked in pain as it hit the ground rolling. I regained my balance as I reached the entrance of the tunnel. The horde of death rats began to slow as I sprinted out of the station and into the darkness of the tunnel ahead. Why are they stopping? I thought to myself as my vision completely disappeared, the tunnel completely shrouding everything in a void of darkness. I watched the horde of death rats behind me as they waited at the base of the tunnel, as if they knew something I didn't. I began to grow uneasy as the darkness began to swallow me up entirely. I ran until I couldn't see the horde behind me and slowed to a stop. Something isn't right, I said to myself as I stood in the pitch-black tunnel in silence. A sense of danger filled my entire being as I grabbed my flashlight and flicked the power switch. A beam of light shot out into the darkness, revealing the reason the death rat had stopped at the entrance of this death trap. Chapter 16. Figures in the Dark. The main reason you should never go into dark tunnels in the backrooms. My flashlight beam shone directly onto a grotesque and rotting, fleshy creature made completely out of exposed human flesh. My scream of pure terror pierced the air as I stumbled backwards, tripping over the tracks as I lost my footing. I landed ass first on the concrete as my flashlight fell from my hands. My heart raced as my breathing grew hasty and shallow. The flashlight flickered before powering off. Holy fuck! What the fuck was that thing? I cried as I blindly groped around for my flashlight. My hands brushed the cool metal handle of my only light source as I grabbed it instantly, turning it on as fast as I could. The air grew colder as I quickly got to my feet. I can't go back. That horde of death rats will kill me. I have to keep going, I said as I took a deep breath. The temperatures around me were close to freezing as I stumbled through the dark, trying to keep my flashlight beam as low as possible as I cautiously made my way down the tunnel. The sounds of faint laughter sent chills to my entire body as I looked up. My flashlight flickered furiously as I locked eyes with the horrifying creature made up of 2 glowing white eyes and a massive razor-sharp teeth-filled smile. My breath caught in my throat as I froze. The creature seemed to be watching my every movement as I remained as still as possible. The faint sounds of laughter grew louder as the chilling smiling face inched closer. I moved my flashlight slightly to try and get a better look at the creature, shifting my footing as I slowly took a step back. It's just watching me, I whispered to myself. The mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth that could tear into me at any moment sent a wave of paranoia through my soul. I took a deep breath before clicking off my flashlight. The sounds of laughter cut off instantly as the smiler inched closer. Its eyes now locked on me. Fuck, I said softly as fear filled my voice. My heart raced as my eyes strained to see in the darkness. The smiler slowly crept closer as I slowly stepped back. The sounds of trains filled the air as a powerful gust of wind shot down the tunnel, pushing me back. The laughter instantly grew deafeningly loud as the smiler lunged at me. I darted to the side and began running as fast as I could. The sounds of laughter filled the tunnel as the smiler gained on me. The sounds of my feet slapping the concrete. The sounds of my Damn, I need to go to bed. It's 12 o'clock at night, bro. The sounds of my feet slapping the concrete as I ran echoed down the tunnel as I ran as fast as I could through the darkness. The smiler lunged at me again, the aura of freezing cold air around it brushing the back of my neck. I took a deep breath and jumped to the side, causing the smiler to charge past me before realizing its prey was now behind it. I instantly began to run over the tracks to the other side of the tunnel as death continued to chase me through the darkness. My head spun as my eyes burned, my mind struggling to see through the blanket of darkness all around me. I have to lose it, I said to myself as I glanced behind me. The Smiler was hot on my heels as its laughter echoed down the tunnel. I gasped for air as my chest burned, my body craving fresh oxygen and a rest break as I pushed myself to run as fast as I could. My stamina began to run low as I listened to the sounds of death remain close behind me. My eyes strained to see what was ahead of me as I struggled to see an end to the tunnel or a way out. The Smiler lunged at me again, its teeth clipping the back of my legs. It slowed down, thinking it had caught me. I pushed further as I realized I had a small advantage at the moment and darted over the tracks back to the left side. The Smiler charged as it began to grow angry at its current prey, reaching speeds I hadn't seen yet. It's faster, I choked as I just barely dodged an attack from the bringer of death. My lungs screamed as my heart pounded furiously in my chest. My feet kicked off as my legs pumped furiously to push me forwards. The smell of rot and death filled the air as I glanced behind me. The Smiler had stopped and began retreating as I continued to run forwards. A wave of relief crashed over me, quickly followed by a wave of paranoia. What is it retreating from? I thought to myself as I began to slow down. I gripped my flashlight tightly as I finally flicked it on, revealing a massive, lanky, shadowy figure that was hidden in the shadows. Fuck! I exhaled as I stumbled backwards, almost dropping my flashlight as the 12-foot shadow began to clamber forwards. Its long, skinny arms almost touched the ground. Its head was a small oval that was microscopic compared to the rest of its body. What? I choked as I forgot how to react, sorry. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as goosebumps spread along my arms and legs. The air was freezing as the unidentifiable creature stumbled towards me. Death crept closer as I remained paralyzed with fear. Run, I stammered as I began to move. My flashlight beam flickered furiously as the creature grew closer. The smell of rot and death filled the air as I stumbled back. Run, I said with more urgency. My body refused to respond as death slowly inched closer. Run, I stammered as my legs went numb. A monotonous, low growl filled the air as the tall, lanky entity began to reach towards me. My head spun as my mind exploded with thoughts. My legs sprang into action as I kicked off the ground, running past the unidentifiable bringer of death as it swung its arms out in an attempt to hit me. I ducked, barely avoiding being knocked to the ground as the entity let off a loud and chilling wail. Chills filled my entire being as I ran as fast as I could away from the 12-foot-tall demon behind me. I need to leave this level now, I said as I shined my flashlight beam down the tunnel. The sounds of running water filled the air as the sound of my footfalls echoed down the tunnel. My eyes followed the shaky white ray of the flashlight as it exposed glimpses of the rusty track, the cracking concrete, the rotting brick walls, and the carcasses of hundreds of wanderers and entities that didn't make it out. The smell of rotting flesh filled the air as I slowed to a stop and looked around. Another one? I hissed as I spun around, shining my flashlight in every direction as I searched for the source of the smell of death. My eyes widened as I came face to face with a large, shadowy creature made of hundreds of tentacles and limbs as it reached directly for me. I dodged the first tentacle, not being so lucky with the second one as it burned my flesh the moment it grazed my shoulder. I cried out in pain and began running, trying to escape as the tentacles reached out to grab me. I shined my flashlight along the walls, hoping to find some sort of door or escape, only to find nothing. The smell of rotting flesh filled my nose as the burn on my shoulder throbbed. Is that my flesh? I said fearfully as I glanced behind me. I just barely dodged another tentacle before the entire creature vanished completely. I continued to run down the tunnel, hoping it would end at some point soon as my shoulder pulsed and throbbed. My eyes followed the flashlight beam as I tried to ignore the smell of burnt, rotting flesh that my shoulder gave off. I can't let the figures in the dark touch me. I said as the pain in my shoulder worsened. I glanced behind me to see if I was being followed before returning my gaze to the front. A large gust of wind raced down the tunnel, followed by the sounds of trains as I continued on. The sounds of my feet hitting the ground echoed down the tunnel and through the tunnel as my breathing grew shallow. I need medical help, I groaned as my shoulder throbbed painfully. My head pounded with a migraine as I struggled to see what was ahead of me. My flashlight flickered a few times, causing me to slow down and stop in the middle of the tracks. How many are there? I choked as I looked around. The hair on the back of my neck stood up straight as death brushed past me, sending a wave of chills through my body. The light. It has to be attracting them somehow, I said as I stared down at the flashlight in my hands. I hesitated before clicking it off, bathing me in my surroundings in darkness. The sounds of movement stopped as I stayed as still as possible. The stench of death slowly disappeared as I took a shaky breath in. I have to get out of these tunnels, I said as I looked around. My eyes struggled to see in the darkness as I strained to see what was around me. I began walking forwards, slowly making my way down the tunnel as I tried to ignore the pain in my shoulder. I began walking in silence as I slowly made my way through the tunnels of level 59, the one I was in now being level 835 in the newer Backrooms level database. Little did I know that I keep ruining suspense. I'm so sorry. Little did I know what was hiding deep in the shadows around me. Chapter 17, A Pack of Hounds. Why you should never trust a single hound that looks alone in the backrooms. I walked in silence, surrounded by complete darkness as I listened for sounds of movement and possible threats. My head hurt as my eyes slowly started getting used to the darkness. I need food and water, so bad, I said softly as I licked my lips, trying to avoid them getting even more chapped as I grew dehydrated. I slowed to a stop and removed my backpack, gently setting it down on the ground as I opened it up. Do I said to myself as I sifted through scraps and empty bottles of almond water. Fucking nothing, I said with a sigh as I put the flashlight back inside the backpack, knowing it was too dangerous to use it here. I need to get out of here, I said as I zipped up the backpack and got to my feet. I slung the bag over my shoulder, the fresh wound having gone completely numb as the burns and aches from bacteria from the entity steadily killed the nerves in that area of my arm. I looked around before continuing to walk slowly through the darkness, gathering my thoughts as I listened for entities. This place is crazy, I said to myself as I stared into the blanket of shadows in front of me. It's like everything in this place is designed to kill whoever comes here. It's not like you can leave, either. I don't know how long I've been here, but it has definitely been at least 48 hours by now, maybe even more, I said as I talked to myself, surrounded by death and darkness as the symptoms of isolation enveloped me. There's so much stuff here. Death rats, party dudes, creepy figures in the shadows, those smiler thingies, that weird rod creature with the camera head, those giant moths and those weird hounds. It all just wants to kill you, I said as hundreds of memories and flashbacks of everything I had been through so far flooded my mind. But there's good stuff, too, some of it at least. All of these levels, I guess, are so cool and mysterious. They all have so much to explore and do, and even though most of the ones I've been in tried or successfully killed me, I said as a flashback of level fun, pipe dreams, and the very first level I started in hit me like a train. I looked around, realizing I had zoned out as I saw I was still surrounded by complete darkness. This level, for example, I said as I began to walk forwards again. There's so many areas to explore and so much cool stuff to look at, but it's almost always trying to kill me. It's all different stuff, too. It's never the same, I said as I remembered the 3 different types of stations I had experienced so far. The level seems massive, though, especially these tunnels, I said quietly as I stared ahead, walking in silence for a moment as my body grew more and more fatigued. There has to be a way out, though. Every level I've been to had a way out, I said as I began looking around, struggling to see in the darkness that surrounded me. If this level is like, I don't know, a giant series of train tunnels and underground stations, maybe the way out of here is up. Or maybe there's a special tunnel or door that you go through to escape, I said as I began to drown in my thoughts. Once I reach the end of this tunnel, I'll find out what my options are, I said as I maintained my calm and cautious walk through the shadows. I know there are stations in this place, I said as I broke the minute-long pause of silence. Maybe one of them leads to the surface. I swallowed. A glimmer of hope rose in the far corners of my mind as the ideas that the stations held my way out of this place surfaced immediately. I need to get to the stations. These tunnels are just full of death, I said as I began to run. My backpack bounced off of my butt as my legs pumped furiously, my heart pounding in my chest as my lungs began to burn again. I was pretty out of shape. The sounds of snarling echoed down the tunnel as I realized I wasn't alone anymore. The outlines of 2 hounds appeared to my left as I ran past them. It's always something, I muttered as I began to run as fast as I could. The 2 hounds quickly followed behind me as I sprinted down the tunnels through the dark. My chest burned as my head spun, my eyes struggling to adjust as the darkness became a blur. The sounds of trains filled the tunnels as my feet slapped the concrete, the hounds snarling as they chased their current victim. I jumped over the tracks, my heel clipping the edge of the rail as I stumbled forwards. I kicked off the ground and regained my balance as the 2 hounds behind me slowed, struggling to run over the rails as they pursued their prey. I have to get out of this tunnel, I cried as the hounds snarled and barked behind me. The faint sounds of whispering filled the air around me as the hounds closed the gap between them and their prey. I glanced behind me to see the 2 hounds were quickly gaining. They're too fast, I cried as I darted back over the rails. The hounds snarled as they leapt at my feet, leaping over the track, barely avoiding getting stuck again as they grew more frustrated with their prey. They're getting smarter, I realized as I said as I realized the severity of the current situation. The hounds snarled angrily as I spotted something in the distance. A faint yellow glow shined through the window of a faraway door. Oh, fuck. I need to get to that door, I said confidently as I began running as fast as I possibly could. The door began to grow closer as the sounds of the pack of hounds behind me grew louder. I glanced over my shoulder to see a 3rd hound had joined the chase, running faster than the other 2. How many of these weird dogs are there down here? I cried as the sounds of howls and barks echoed through the tunnel into the darkness. My lungs burned as the backpack bounced on my back, digging into my spine as I furiously pumped my legs. Pain shot through my thighs. One of the hounds sunk its teeth deep into my calf. What? Pain shot through my thighs. One of the hounds sunk its teeth deep into my leg. I glanced behind me to see they had closed the gap and were charging at me on all sides. Get off! I cried as the 2nd hound dug its claws into my right arm. I screamed in pain before spinning a full 360 degrees, causing the hounds to dart outwards as they avoided what appeared to be an attack. I took the chance and began sprinting through the opening in the pack of... it's 7 minutes before stuttering. Goddamn. I took the chance and began sprinting through the opening in the pack of snarling, hungry hounds. The hounds barked loudly, the sounds of their cries traveling down the tunnel as the pack of 3 began pursuing close behind once more. The door is right there, I cried as a set of double steel doors came into view. I glanced behind me to see the hounds had begun gaining on me once again, growing closer by the second. I hesitated before stopping in my tracks, facing the hounds directly. They snarled with excitement as their prey finally stopped. I stared at what looked like to be the leader directly in the eyes as I let out an ear-splitting scream, the shriek exploding through my throat as it became amplifying. That should say amplified. You know what? I'm going to fix that while I'm reading it. As it became amplified with the echoes of the tunnel. The hounds froze, scrambling backwards as a deafeningly loud sound shocked them to their core. I jumped forwards, causing 2 of the hounds to dart back, running into the darkness. The leader of the pack stayed, standing its ground. I maintained eye contact before whipping around, sprinting for the door. The lead hound growled before barking loudly, telling the other 2 that ran away to initiate the hunt again as it began charging after me. Leave me alone! I screamed as I glanced behind me. The 2 hounds that had run away began emerging from the darkness, the outlines of the creatures' bodies growing bolder through the shadows. My chest heaved as I closed in on the door. The solid steel wall with a push mechanism and solid glass window laid only a few 20 feet away. The lead hound snarled angrily before making a terrifying bark that sounded like a human being killed mixed with the dog's cries of pain. I glanced behind me to see the lead hound changing direction, taking a path that would cut in front of mine. Fucking hell. I have to lose these things, I said as I turned around, dodging the other 2 hounds as they skidded to a stop, digging their clawed feet into the concrete as they changed the direction almost immediately. My head spun as my body grew more tired than before, my legs beginning to hurt as they grew weaker and sore. I darted left before turning 90 degrees, facing the 2 hounds again as the lead hound charged directly at me from the only way around the 2 others. I have to charge through them. I choked as I watched the two hounds charge towards me from my left, while the leader of the pack charged my right. I hesitated before sprinting at full speed at the gap between the leader and its servants, dodging razor-sharp teeth and claws as the hound snarled angrily. The leader growled before perfectly arcing the corner, maintaining its speed as it charged again. I kicked my legs, glancing behind me as the leader of the pack closed in on me. "Fuck you!" I cried as I slowed down, taking my backpack from my back as I swung it as hard as I could at the lead hound's head. The leather bag connected with the hound's neck with a crunch, sending it crashing into the concrete with a sickening thud. Its body rolling to a stop near the tracks as I turned to face forwards, leaving the lead hound limp on the rails behind me. I knew it wasn't going to stay unconscious for long. The other two aren't going to be too happy about that, I said to myself as I quickly approached a set of metal doors. I glanced behind me, looking for the other two hounds as I slowed down, stopping in front of the set of steel doors. The bright, warm light coming through the windows caused my vision to blur as I turned back around and quickly made my way through the doors, shutting them behind me. The sounds of the lock clicking shut echoed through the warmly lit hallway I was in. "Where do the other two I was cut off as a glass window on the door behind me exploded, shattering as glass shards flew out from the window frame. I screamed and turned around, adrenaline shooting through my blood as one of the hounds clawed its way through the now broken window. It snarled and growled, gnashing its teeth angrily as it began to squeeze its way through. The door shook violently as the second one rammed into it repeatedly, shaking the set of steel doors as a visible indent began to appear. "They're getting through?" I choked as the hound crawling through the window began clawing at the door, its body halfway through the small rectangle that once held a pane of glass. I had no idea how this thing was getting through. The second hound howled as it rammed into the door again, this time bending the lock as the doors strained to remain in their frame. "I have to leave right now," I said as I snapped out of it. I adjusted my backpack before turning around, sprinting down the warmly lit tunnel as the pale white tile walls became a blur. The hounds howled and barked angrily as the doors kept them at bay. I glanced behind me as the doors burst open, metal shrapnel exploding outwards as the two hounds burst through the doorway and began charging down the hall. "They don't stop!" I cried as I began running as fast as I could. Sorry, I had to take a breath. A set of double doors laid at the end of the hallway, a set of wooden boards nailed over the small, square windows preventing any visibility as to what was beyond those doors. Two other hallways branched off in both directions, providing two more hallways to run down. The sound of snarls and barks echoed off the walls as the two hounds pursued the one who killed a member of their pack. I didn't know I killed it, though. I just felt it was unconscious. They believed so, though. I glanced behind me to see the hounds quickly gaining on me, their eyes locked on me with a thirst for my flesh. "They want me dead. They aren't going to stop or die until they do so." Sorry. "They want me dead. They aren't going to stop until I die or they do." Damn, I can't read. I'm sorry. I'm reading that correctly. I'm trying my best. I don't want to use AI to read this shit, so... "They want me dead. They aren't going to stop until they die or I do," I said as feelings of paranoia and dread began to set in. The hounds continued to gain on me as their thirst for the kill gave them the strength they needed to continue the chase. "I have to lose them," I said sternly as I observed my surroundings while I ran. The walls began to show mold and rot as the air grew thicker. "I'm entering a new area. Maybe I can lose them in one of these hallways," I said as I glanced behind me. The hounds had slowed down a bit, beginning to show signs of fear for something up ahead. "I guess they just don't want to go down this way," I said as feelings of hope crushed any sense of caution or paranoia I had left. That should say or not of. I'm going to fix that because I'm reading this in real time and this is the audio revision. So blah, 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 blah. I'm going to shut up now. I slowed to a stop and watched as the hounds whimpered and growled in my direction. "Not so powerful now, are you?" I cried as I watched the hounds cry out in fear, seeming to wail in anguish and pain as they turned around and ran back down the hallway. I smiled to myself and turned to face the doors up ahead. Well, I guess I lucked out. I slowly walked up to the door and tried to look through the rotting wooden boards that had been nailed over the window. If this is a train system level with underground metro type stuff, why would one of these doors be locked and boarded up? I said as I began to look around for something to remove the boards with. I glanced at the rotting wood for a second. You're not 5 feet tall, bro. You don't need to look up. I glanced at the rotting wood for a second before I hesitantly grabbed it with both hands, almost gagging at the rotting, decayed planks before... I really should stop doing these all in one go, bro. Almost gagging as the rotting, decayed planks pressed against my skin. "This has to be an exit if it's blocked off," I said as I slowly began pulling off each of the wooden planks with my bare hands. The stench of rotting logs and rusted metal filled my nose as I slowly unblocked the window and locking mechanism. Damn, I want to play Minecraft Skyblock. I'm actually going to do that after this recording while the shit's uploading. I dropped the last wooden piece onto the ground and stared at the area with the window in awe. It's wrong! I'm going to just keep going with it at this point. It's not even worth it. I dropped the last wooden piece onto the ground and stared at the area within the window with awe. A massive brownish-orange colored train tunnel lay beyond the door, the warm orange lights giving off a feeling of relief and security. I hesitated, my mind telling me not to trust it before opening the door and walking into the biggest tunnel I'd found at the backways. I'm not even going to say anything. Oh, yeah, Chapter 18 releases tomorrow, by the way. For the full compilation, literally the next second. Here you go. Chapter 18, The Tunnels of the Backways. Why you should never trust the back tunnels of Level 59. I stood on the dark, orange-colored stone platform as the double doors slammed shut behind me, the loud slam echoing down the tunnel before vanishing into the distance. Holy shit, I said as I stared at the tunnel in awe. Large mining system-style lights at the bowl-shaped top lined the top of the ceiling. The lighting and supports being held up by a maze of massive steel pipes and panels. My eyes explored the tunnel system, admiring the dark orange stone and the smooth platforms that made up the tunnel. My nose scrunched up as the overpowering scent of rotting metal, decaying wood, mold, and rotting flesh filled the air. I choked back vomit as I took a step back, the overpowering odors telling me I shouldn't be here. This place reeks of death and decay, I said as my eyes ran along the rusting metal tracks that stretched into the distance. The air was close to freezing and some areas felt warmer and colder than others. It all feels off, I said as I began to turn around, wanting to leave as an overpowering weight of fear and uneasiness began to crush down on me. I now realized why the hounds ran away. I grabbed the door handle and pulled, my heart and hope sinking as the door jammed before closing again. It's jammed, I choked as I stared through the glass window. The smell of death slowly trickled in the area around me as I focused on the door. Paranoia and panic rose as I shook the door handles frantically. Let me out! I don't want to be here! I screamed as my voice quickly traveled down the warmly lit tunnels behind me. My fingers slipped off of the door handles as the feeling of sadness crashed down on me. Please, I said softly as I stared through the small square window at the mess of wooden boards on the floor. The boards I had removed to see what was behind these very doors. How did it even get jammed? I said angrily as I kicked the steel door hard, wincing as pain shot up my leg. It was working perfectly fine just a moment or so ago, I said as I peered through the window at the handles on the other side. The locking mechanism on the other side was loose, having broken when the door slammed shut. Stupid door, I muttered as I turned to face the seemingly infinite tunnel ahead. My heart began to race as I spotted an entity I had never seen before. The creature had the appearance and figure of a human, and appeared to be aimlessly wandering around about 40 feet from where I stood. It was tall, and seemed to take the appearance of some sort of SCP. Its skin was pale and a sickly yellow, and its eyes were white and sunken in. Its skin seemed to be covered with millions of microscopic bumps. What the hell is that thing? I said as I watched it wander aimlessly near the far wall. The subtle sound of humming reached my ears, causing me to look around. I grew nervous before staring at the mysterious tall humanoid creature again. Is that thing making that noise? Is that a human that got stuck here? My eyes darted around the tunnel, scanning for any other threats before I decided to get more information on this creature. It looks like it's not angry at me, yet, I said nervously as I watched it slowly wander closer, not seeing me yet as it hummed and whistled randomly. I watched as the loud sounds of trains blasted through the tunnel, a large gust of wind crashing into me, knocking me back into the doors and onto the ground. I groaned in pain as the creature looked around, trying to find the location of the deafening slam my body gave off when I hit the door. I waited a minute to settle the pain that was shooting through every nerve in my body before getting to my feet. The tall, humanoid-like creature had locked its eyes in my direction, making a chilling clicking noise before rushing at me. "Shit," I said as I darted right, trying to go the other direction. The sounds of humming and whistling continued to echo off the walls as the creature quickly gained on me. The smell of death and rotting skin filled the air as my feet slapped the dark orange rock platform, the sounds of my footfalls echoing through the tunnels. The pale yellow creature began to quickly close the gap as it ran at top speeds of miles. Sorry, I made it 5 minutes in before stuttering. Let's go. New record. The pale yellow creature began to cloak. Let's read it slowly, guys. This is like when you read at school and everyone's eyes are on you, but I'm doing this at 11 o'clock at night, running off of 2 monsters and 3 chapters being recorded in the past hour. The pale yellow creature began to quickly close the gap as it ran at a top speed of 7 miles per hour in my direction. There we go. I sprinted as fast as I could down the tunnel, occasionally looking back as the creature continued to gain ground. "It's too fast," I said as I realized it would catch me before I could lose it. I glanced over the tracks and began running left, my breath catching in my throat as I spotted a pack of 4 hounds in the distance. I looked behind me to see the skin creature was still chasing me, its eyes locked on its current target. "If I can get the hounds to attack it or something," I said as I returned my gaze to the pack of hounds in the distance. "Hey, dog freaks!" I cried as I waved my arms in the air. 2 of the hounds immediately began barking as the pack of 4 charged at me from the front. I listened as the skin stealer seemed to wail in anguish, still maintaining its speed as it pursued me from behind. I darted to the right, just barely avoiding the first hound as it skidded to a stop in front of the skin stealer. It snarled before scrambling away from the deadlier creature, running in front of it as it continued to chase me. I darted left, barely avoiding another hound as it jumped at me, kicking off at the ground as it swiftly changed directions. My heart raced as I watched the last 2 hounds charging at me from 2 different sides. I took a deep breath and charged, diving like a baseball player to the home plate as the 2 hounds leapt forwards, one of them yelping as it hit the ground rolling as the other one hit the skin stealer, causing it to wail loudly. I quickly got to my feet and began running as fast as I could away. The sounds of anguish and corrupt humming mixed with the yelps, snarls, and growls as the skin stealer quickly made its way through the 4 hounds. I glanced behind me, watching with horror as the tall, pale yellow creature tore the skin from the hounds' bodies and placed it on its own. Vomit rose up in my throat as I gagged, slowing to a stop before throwing up on the orange stone rocks below. I choked back tears as the smell of vomit mixed with the smell of death filled my nose. There we go. I watched as the skin stealer dropped the last flesh-covered corpse to the ground, placing the final shred of the hound's skin on its body before it locked eyes with me. I froze, waiting for it to attack, but it just turned around and aimlessly shambled away. I wiped the vomit from my lips and stared at the 4 shredded bodies of the hounds with shock. Fuck! Oh my god. Is that what that thing would have done to me if I didn't do what I did? I said with mass amounts of fear and disgust filling my voice. I felt more vomit rise in my chest and turned away, leaving the 4 rotting piles of flesh and bluish-black blood to decay in the tunnels on its own. Aren't the hound thingies, aren't they a creature in this place? They're a creature of this place. They're not a home thing. They're creatures of this place, I said as millions of questions began pouring into my thoughts. Glanced at the 4 corpses one last time before speed walking straight forwards, wanting to leave this tunnel as soon as I possibly could. The creatures stole the skin off of those hounds while they were still alive, I said, shock and fear still filling my voice and body language. I glanced around nervously as the constant stench of rot and decay began to make me sick to my stomach again. I took a deep breath in, trying to calm down a bit as the overwhelming sense of isolation and danger filled my entire being. I looked around before beginning to walk again, the dark orange rock walls becoming an orange blur as I zoned out over time. I had to clear my throat, sorry. The sounds of water dripping from up high began echoing down the tunnel as overwhelming anxiety began filling my emotions. Water? I said as I began to walk faster. The idea that there was drinkable water somewhere gave me hope of survival. I swallowed, trying to keep my throat from going completely dry as I grew even more dehydrated. I'd gone at least 4 or 5 hours without water, having escaped the death rats on the previous level sections, and having to run away from the hounds had made me increasingly dehydrated. I began to run, the sounds of my feet hitting the uneven solid ground echoing down the tunnel and into the distance. The smell of mildew and waterlogged wood filled the air as I began to slow down. Okay, we got 3 pages left. There's water up there, I said as I looked at the puddle in front of me before staring up at the ceiling. A steady dripping water source that seeped through the rock and began dripping into this tunnel system. I need to go up, I said as I ran through the puddle in front of me, soaking the lower cuffs of my jeans and the top of my gym shoes as the water splashed outwards whilst I disrupted the piece of the puddle for what was ahead. Man, that was a mouthful. The sounds of dripping water continued to echo down the tunnel as I ran as fast as I could. My eyes fell on a skin stealer up ahead, causing me to slow down. Shit. I don't see a door or a hiding space either, I said as I began to slowly creep forward. The skin stealer clicked as it looked around, aimlessly wandering to the left before emitting a loud humming noise that echoed through the tunnel. I have to go past it, I said nervously as I continued to slowly make my way towards the skin stealer that lied just up ahead. I took a deep breath before cautiously walking as slowly and quietly as I could. Maybe it doesn't see me as a threat right now, I said quietly as I stared at the skin stealer in front of me. The 30-foot gap between me and the skin stealer slowly became a 20-foot gap. I froze as the skin stealer turned slightly, facing the wall to my left as it hummed loudly. It went silent before aimlessly wandering over to the wall, making another series of clicks. The smell of water began to mix with the stench of rotting skin as I began to feel the overwhelming sense of danger the skin stealer gave off, causing my breathing to waver. I stumbled as I lost my footing and fell to the ground. The skin stealer wailed loudly before turning to face me. Shit, I said as I scrambled to my feet, readjusting my backpack as I kicked off, angering the skin stealer as I sprinted away from it. It wailed loudly before charging at me, quickly gaining as it clicked and hummed. 7 miles per hour versus my 8 or 9 was unimaginable speeds that allowed it to catch up. Sorry, I lost my spot. The sounds of my footsteps on the uneven rock echoed down the tunnel as I ran as fast as I could. My head spun as I began to run low on energy, my body being starved and extremely dehydrated as I failed to tend to my food and liquid situation. My throat went dry as I glanced behind me, the skin stealer just being a few feet away as it clicked and wailed. Its sunken white eyes were locked on me as it ran in a way similar to a human, but it seemed clumsy with its movement, like it didn't know how to act like a human when it looked slightly like one. I took a deep breath and leaned forwards, allowing me to run faster slightly. It is 11:30 at night. I'm running off 2 monsters, just so you know. I took a deep breath and leaned forwards, allowing me to run faster as the smell of water, damaged wood, and rusting metal became overpowering. This place is fucking huge, I said as my breathing grew more and more uneven. My foot slipped as my shoes slid on the rocks, the water from above soaking the ground even more and more as I progressed. I cried out before stumbling forwards, the skin stealer grazing my back as its hand brushed against the back of my supply bag. My feet slid as I struggled to maintain my speed on the wet rocks before I got back my balance. I glanced behind me to see the skin stealer click angrily as it slid on the water before coming to a stop. I smiled to myself before losing my footing, my shoes losing traction as I slid uncontrollably on the wet rocks below. My heart rate soared as I fell forwards, rolling over the wet rocks after crashing on the ground before slamming into a dip in the ground hard. The wind was knocked from my lungs as I came to a rough stop on the uneven ground, gasping for air as bruises began forming all over my sides and arms. Ow, shit, I groaned as I slowly rolled on my stomach. My head pounded as I looked up at what was in front of me. With all the attention I had kept on the skin stealer, I had almost missed a stairwell leading upwards. That has to be my way out, I grunted as I slowly got to my feet. My arms were covered in water and small cuts and bruises from the fall. My hips and waist were covered in bruises as well. I slowly limped over to the staircase and hesitated as the overpowering sense of danger filled my mind. Shit, I have to. This is the only stairwell up to where the water is, I said to myself as I began limping over to the stairwell again. The overpowering stench of waterlogged metal and wood hit me like a truck as I hesitated again. This is the only way to get to the water, I mumbled as I tried to convince myself that it was okay, ignoring the overwhelming sense of paranoia that was consuming me. Little did I know my sanity was decreasing rapidly over the levels I was going through. Well, it's now or never, I said as I glanced over my shoulder at the skin stealer behind me. It wailed like it was in pain as it kept its eyes on me, not being able to make its way over the slippery, uneven rocks in front of it. I took a step forwards before limping up the staircase, hoping to find the source of water as a blanket of paranoia fell down around me, worsening my physical and mental state as I had reached the top of the staircase. Fuck. I'm gonna pass, I moaned in pain as my head spun furiously, causing me to lose control of my body as it went limp. I had run out of energy, completely dehydrated, running off of a few hours of sleep in the past 2 days, and barely any food. I hit the water-covered ground with a splash as I fell unconscious in the waterlogged station, my body laying in the dark as the sound of water became the only sounds around me. I inhaled one last time of fresh oxygen before everything went dark. Chapter 19, The Waterlogged Station. Why you should never trust something that looks human, but actually isn't. I woke up to the overpowering stench of water and mildew as I regained consciousness. Why am I soaking wet? I mumbled groggily as I pushed off the ground, my shirt hanging low as the water weighed it down. Oh, I mumbled as I looked around me. I was laying in a large pool of shallow water that was filled with chunks of wood, metal, and random bones and trash. I sighed before getting to my feet, shaking my backpack in the hopes of getting rid of some of the water as I unzipped the main compartment. I swear if my flashlight doesn't work, I'm just gonna drown myself in this disgusting water, I said as I sifted through my backpack for my only source of light. I pushed aside some empty bottles of almond water that I should have thrown away long ago and pulled the flashlight out from the bottom of the bag. My head spun as anxiety ate away at me, my hands shaking as I shook the water from the flashlight before flicking it on. It flickered for a couple of seconds before powering on, shining a faint beam of light into the waterlogged station I was in. I smiled as a sense of relief washed over me. Thank God, I said to myself as I zipped my backpack, soaking wet supply bag from the... What? I said as I... Sorry, I made it... Oh, new record. 2 minutes in before I stuttered. Check out other videos because I do these all... Disclaimer, I read these with real voice because I hate the idea that making this with AI, it would have no personality and shit. That's why I do this. So please don't click off the video. There will be a few times where I'm like, oh, fuck, I said this wrong. But it's all part of the amazing process of making something that isn't AI these days. I'm going to reread the paragraph because I kind of spoiled it. I swear if my flashlight doesn't work, I'm just going to drown myself in this disgusting water, said as I sifted through my backpack for my only source of light. I pushed aside some empty bottles of almond water that I should have put away so long ago. I'm adding this sentence, by the way. I pushed aside some empty bottles of almond water that I should have gotten rid of long ago and pulled the flashlight out from the bottom of the bag. My head spun as anxiety ate away at me, my hand shaking as I shook the water from the flashlight before flicking it on. It flickered for a couple of seconds before powering on, shining a faint beam of light into the waterlogged station. I smiled as a sense of relief washed over me. Thank God, I said to myself as I zipped up my soaking wet supply bag from the ground and slung it over my shoulder. I'll fix that later. The bag made a wet smack as it connected with my back, making me gag slightly as the stench of mildew and waterlogged wood continued to fill my nose. I looked around before taking a step forwards, my gym shoes filling with water as my feet sunk into the ankle-deep water that flooded this area. Sorry? Feel like I'm going to implode. This is my 4th chapter of the day, and it is 2 hours deep. This is also 8 pages, so you're in for a long one this time. My eyes strained as I moved the flashlight around, slowly running the thin beam of light along the walls and floor. Well, it could be worse, I said as I began slowly walking through the ankle-deep water deeper into the station. The sounds of dripping water echoed through the dark chamber, as well as the sounds of me walking through the dirty water as I searched for the exit. This has to be the way out. I mean, I went so far for this, I said as I observed my surroundings. The entire station was barely lit, and a massive pool of discolored ankle-deep gray water covered the entire area. The smell of rotting wood and mildew was overpowering, the stench of water-damaged stone and metal mixing into it. Tall gray pillars with faded red lines around the middle supported the ceiling as water constantly dripped from above. The sounds of running water and constant dripping echoed constantly through the entire station. I kind of want to get out of here before I get some sort of horrible disease, I muttered as I lifted my foot up from the water, the murky gray liquid pouring off of my shoes as it steadily dripped off my pants legs. I took another step forwards, plunging the foot I had just lifted into the air back into the discolored pools that covered the sublevel. With all the stuff that wants to kill you, I wouldn't be surprised if this water is filled with something, I said as I slowly and cautiously made my way through the stagnant, discolored water. The sounds of something moving in the dark corners bounced off the wall as I stopped in my tracks. I glanced around before shining the flashlight beam over the top of the water. The sounds of something snarling and grunting sounded to my right, causing me to instantly divert my gaze off of the water and in the direction of the sound. "Hello?" I called as I slowly moved the flashlight over the area the noise came from. Ripples moved outwards in the water as out of the corner of the flashlight's beam as I instantly moved the flashlight over the ripples and upwards. A scream caught in my throat as my flashlight beam revealed a grotesque, reddish creature with beady black eyes. Its lips were completely sunken in, exposing a sharpened row of discolored human teeth. "That can't be human," I said as I stumbled back in shock. The creature's skin was a reddish brown and appeared to be dry and flaking. Its flesh was covered in holes and pustules that leaked a thick reddish-brown substance that appeared to be a mixture of pus and blood. Its eyes were sunken in and consisted of beady black dots. Its lips were almost completely gone, exposing a set of human-like teeth with decaying gums and dead enamel. Its skin looked extremely wrinkled, and it stank of rotting flesh and decaying flesh. Its nose was shaped similar to that of the humans, but all that remained was a subtle bump in the holes of its nostrils. "It looks like a human," I choked as it snarled at me, maintaining eye contact as I shined my flashlight directly at it. "What are you—" I was cut off as the thing snarled angrily and lunged towards me, splashing water towards me as it shambled forwards at shocking speeds. My heart leapt into my throat as I jumped out of the way, diving to the ground as water splashed outwards. I got to my feet quickly as the terrifying creature turned to face me, snarling and shaking as it lunged again. I grabbed my backpack and swung, the leather sack once again connecting with an entity's face as the creature extended its arms towards me. It snarled and wailed like a human crying in pain as it crashed to the ground. Its reddish-brown skin pulsed as it got up from the shallow water and charged again. I darted left, its almost all-bone arms grazing my bag as I shined my flashlight in front of me. "That thing was a human," I choked as it turned to face me. It snarled before darting into the shadows, disappearing behind a crumbling stone pillar before vanishing completely. "It's gonna come back," I said quickly as I began searching for a way out. The sounds of something moving in the water came from all around me as I began to search for a suitable weapon instead. I spotted a metal pipe poking out of the water a couple of feet away and looked around before going straight for it. The wretch snarled as it lunged at me from the right. "Nope," I grunted as I leapt forwards, diving into the water with my hands outstretched as the wretch darted back into the darkness. I scrambled on all fours to the metal pipe and grabbed it with both hands, remaining on my knees in the water as I looked around frantically. "It's like it's hunting me," I said as my eyes darted around in the darkness. The wretch snarled behind me as I leapt to my feet and swung, the rusted metal pipe connecting with the side of the wretch's face with a sound that was a mix of crunching dry leaves and tearing flesh. The creature wailed in pain as it darted back, readying itself to charge forwards as a dark red liquid began to pour from its fresh wound and down its face. "Just go away!" I cried as the wretch snarled angrily. My eyes darted around its body, staring at its tearing reddish-brown skin as it peeled from its body. I kicked off, splashing water towards the hideous creature as I ran down the left hall of the water-filled station. The wretch wailed and snorted before disappearing into the shadows behind me. I gripped the metal pipe tightly, and as I ran, the sounds of splashing water sent off as my feet hit the ground, echoing through the darkness. "Where is it?" I said as my eyes darted around my current surroundings. The sounds of movement came to my left as I turned around and swung, the metal pipe missing the wretch as I swung too early. It snarled and made a gagging noise as it grabbed the pipe with two hands, its bony fingers crunching as they bent around the rusted metal. I yelped as the wretch pushed forwards with an incredible amount of strength. "What are you?" I screamed as I spun my body, ripping the pipe from the wretch's grasp as it snarled loudly. I faced what was ahead and kicked out, my gym shoe connecting with the wretch's thin, shredded legs as I ran forwards. The creature wailed as it hit the water face first, its legs crunching as they bent unexpectedly, cracking the skin as the wretch's Grayish dark red blood soaked the water. I glanced behind me to see the wretch crawling through the shallow water as it attempted to continue chasing me. Man, this is fast-paced. The sound of its wails and snarls echoed down the tunnel as I bounced off the dripping stone walls of the station. The thing is not fucking human. It was not human, I said as I glanced behind me again. Its beady black eyes stared at me as I slowed down. It appeared to be pleading for help. I stared into its eyes as feelings of guilt and worry began to set in. What do I choked on my words as the wretch wailed, the sounds of its distorted human-like cries filling the air as they traveled through the flooded station and into the darkness beyond. I took a step towards the creature, feeling like I should help it as my grip on the metal pipe loosened. Was this thing once a person like me who got trapped here? Will this happen to me one day? I said softly as I began to grow sympathetic for the creature. I began to walk over to it, forgetting the dangers around me entirely as I walked straight up to the creature that tried to kill me less than a minute ago. It whimpered, its distorted crying filling my ears as the darkness surrounded us. I dropped the metal pipe, the sound of it hitting the water echoing down the tunnel as the metal pipe became completely submerged. Are you okay? I said softly as I locked eyes with the creature. Its beady black eyes appeared to scream for help as they stared directly at me. I reached out, my hand almost touching the creature before it snarled angrily, swiping a set of razor-sharp claws over my flesh. I screamed in pain as the wretch lunged forwards, its beady black eyes locked on me as it attacked. I scrambled backwards on all fours before getting to my feet. The wretch wailed as it grabbed the metal pipe from the water, almost immediately knowing where it was as it gripped it in its bony, shredded fist as it swung it at my legs. I stumbled back, causing it to miss as it crawled to its feet. It lunged forwards, the pipe aimed at my head as I ducked. "You dumb fucker!" I cried as the metal pipe whizzed past me, smashing through the concrete pillar to my right. I kicked off, stumbling in the shallow water as the wretch snarled angrily. The creature swung again, the pipe rushing past my neck as it once again missed. I dove forwards, rolling to the left as the metal pipe just barely missed my head. The water rippled as the wretch darted into the shadows to my left. I panted as my head spun furiously, my chest heaving as I brushed past with death. The wretch snarled in the shadows as I sprinted through the shallow waters flooding the station or whatever was in front of me. It's hunting me. I'm so fucking stupid, I said as I glanced behind me. I cried out as the metal pipe flew from the shadows, the large metal rod spinning in the air as it soared towards my skull. My knees buckled as I hit the water, rolling as the metal pipe bounced off a cracked concrete pillar and spun off into the darkness. My weapon is gone, and so was its weapon. The wretch snarled, its gags and cries echoing all around me as I scanned the darkness for the current threat. My breath caught in my throat as the sounds of splashing water came from behind. I rolled to the left, causing the wretch to swipe its clawed hand at nothing as it stumbled over to where I once was. I leapt to my feet and ran, leaving the creature behind me as I pumped my legs furiously, soaking the legs of my jeans as the stagnant water splashed outwards with every fall of my feet. I have to get away from that thing, I hissed as I glanced behind me. The wretch was gone, having vanished from the open area as it hunted from the shadows. My eyes ran along the walls and floor as I searched for more weapons. The sounds of fast-moving water filled the air as I continued to run blindly ahead. The air grew cold, spreading goosebumps along my arms and legs as my... Reading too fast. The air grew cold, spreading goosebumps along my arms and legs as my breath formed in clouds in front of me. I slowed, my stomach growling as the sounds of water surrounded me. "I'm so hungry," I groaned as I looked around. The lava had nothing for me to eat, drink, or do. I hadn't slept in what felt like days, and the last thing I had was a bottle of almond water 7 hours ago. I want to give up, I said softly as I slowed to a stop. I looked at the dull, isolated area around me as the sound of water running became a background noise. There isn't a way out. I'm gonna die. What if that thing I saw was... I shuddered. Was just something like me who got stuck here too long, I said as feelings of dread began to sink in. The smell of rotten skin filled the air as I snapped out of it. I need to leave this place. This entire world, whatever it is, I said as I began to blindly make my way through the ankle-deep water towards what was ahead. The sounds of whispering surrounded me as I began to grow paranoid. "Who's there?" I called, my words echoing for a while before being swallowed by the shadows. My head spun as I began to run, the backpack bouncing on my back as the water soaked my clothes and skin. Let's see. Goddamn, 5 more pages? Oh, my lord. Hold on. I lost my place, scrolling. Yep, there we go. My head spun faster as the darkness became a blur around me, the faint outlines of the station disappearing completely as I ran blindly ahead. I just want to find some food, water, and a bed. I just want to be safe for a single day, please. I whispered to myself in the dark as the water splashed around me. My legs began to grow sore as I stared blankly ahead. My mind located in an entirely different place than where I was. Thoughts of just being safe for a day began to fuel me as I sprinted through the water, passing concrete pillars and advertising posters covered by a decaying glass pane as I dashed through the shadows. The snarls of a nearby wretch echoed through the air as I glanced around me, continuing to run forwards. Where? I was cut off as I ran directly into a fallen support beam, my body flipping over the rusted metal rods as I hit the ground rolling. My body hit the water with a splash as the air was knocked from my lungs. I rolled through the stagnant water as my body and clothes tore and ripped against the uneven rotting ground. Sorry, I need to stretch. Read these all in one go. Sitting on a bed, reading a fucking computer screen is... Oh man, I've been at this for 2 hours, guys. My head pounded as my entire body was enveloped with immense amounts of pain and fatigue. I groaned in pain as my vision blurred. The snarls of an entity nearby grew closer as I struggled to get to my feet. I tripped. I groaned as I weakly looked over the ceiling supports that I had fallen over. The stagnant water stung as it entered my new wounds and gashes, causing me to moan painfully as waves of pain began crashing over me. Get up! I grunted as the sounds of the wretch grew closer than ever. I looked around in the darkness, struggling to focus through the waves of excruciating pain as I searched for the nearby wretch. The sound of congested and distorted breathing and snarls filled the air as ripples began spreading in the water to my left. I groaned in pain as I struggled to stand, pushing off of the ground as the filthy, discolored water filled my cuts and scratches. The wretch gagged before entering my view, its peeling, darkish red skin almost blending with the darkness as it appeared to limp around aimlessly. That's the one I injured, I whispered to myself as I snorted it before gagging on nothing. It appeared to sniff the air, the 2 holes in its face that laid where a nose should be pointed slightly upwards as they expanded and contracted. The wretch froze, looking in the darkness as it appeared to be deep in thought before emitting a bone-chilling growl from the depths of its throat. The creature's head cracked as the skin shifted suddenly. The wretch's black, beady eyes now locked directly on me. Stay away, I groaned as I moved back with one arm, keeping my body on its side as the smell of stagnant water filled my nose. I hesitated before scrambling to my feet, causing the wretch to lunge at me. I stumbled in the dark as the water once again soaked my legs, splashing outwards as I ran as fast as I could after the fall I had just had. The wretch snarled angrily as it limped after me, its wounded leg appearing to be rotting away by the second as dark red blood soaked the area around the broken bone. I need an exit, I groaned as I struggled to keep my supply bag on my back. The wretch gagged before reaching out, grabbing the back of my backpack as it pulled me back. I growled in pain as the wretch began to pull me towards it using the bag of supplies I had on me. I squirmed as I dug my heels into the uneven ground, the water filling my shoes as I struggled to keep my distance from death. The wretch snarled hungrily and angrily as it yanked the bag on my back with its peeling, bony arm. I slid my shoulders out of the straps as the bag went flying into the darkness, the wretch wailing as it went stumbling back, crashing into the fallen ceiling support before falling into the water with a splash. It took my fucking bag, I growled as I ran as fast as I could away from the wretch, not wanting to give it a chance to get back up while I was nearby. The sounds of steadily dripping water and my feet splashing through the shallow liquid echoed through the station as I ran silently through the darkness. The ground became more and more uneven as I went deeper in, venturing into an older area of the station as I stared straight ahead. My lungs burned as I listened for the sounds of more entities before I began gasping for air. My lungs burned. Yeah, I just read that. My heart pounded as pain shot through my chest. Fuck! I growled in pain as my chest stung with immense pain. Damn. My vision blurred as I grabbed the area over my heart with my right hand, cupping it over my pectoral muscles as I groaned in pain. My head spun as whispers filled the air around me, the scent of death floating after me as chills went through my body. I looked around, pain and confusion covering my expression of fear and doubt as I searched for an exit. There's nothing here, I groaned as I dropped to my knees in the water. The steady dripping from the ceiling punched itself into my thoughts like a hole puncher on paper as I stared at the two-inch deep, filthy water all around me. My heart rate slowed as I realized My heart rate slowed as I relaxed, tears filling my eyes as I looked around me, my eyes darting over the crumbling pillars and deteriorating concrete. Why am I here? What did I do? Why do I deserve this? How do I deserve this? Just let me out. I don't want to do this anymore, I said sadly as tears streamed down my face. My eyes stung as the filthy water mixed with my tears, my body enclosed, smelling of mildew and rotting stone. What even is this place? Are people just sent here to die? How did they even get here? I whispered sadly before stopping as I took a shaky deep breath in. The sounds of dripping water became background noise as I sat in the filthy water in silence. I sniffed before bringing my hands from the water to wipe my tears. The smell of dirty water filled my ears. The smell of dirty water filled my nose as tears continued to fall down my face. Maybe I just need some food, water, and rest, but I don't even know if this place has all that stuff in one place, I said sadly as I stared at the flooded, abandoned station around me. It just has that at isolated areas with nothing in them, and I'm just completely alone here, I whispered softly as I looked around. The water around me moved gently against my body as I sat in the shallow pools, gathering my thoughts. Some levels just more dangerous and mean than others, I said as I began to remember each level I had been to. Some of them had more supplies and less entities, while levels like this one had no supplies and tons of entities. Are these places I'm going to not from my reality? Is this another galaxy or world? I don't ever get to leave? It sure seems like it, I said as I trailed off. I curled up, bringing my knees up to my chin as I stared down the station into the distance. The smell of rotting concrete and water-damaged rock filled my nose as I sniffled, the last few tears racing down my cheeks before dropping into the discolored water below. I took a deep breath. There is a way out, though, I said as I began to regain some sense of hope, not wanting to sit depressed in the dirty, shallow water around me as I looked around more calmly than before. The sounds of steadily dripping water continued to fill the air as I shifted my position. The sounds of my body moving the water filling the station as I got to my feet. I may have no food, water, or light source, but I have hope that I can leave this place. There can only be so much stuff in this world. I will finish all these, what do I call them, levels? I'll finish all of these levels eventually, I said as I began to shuffle through the shallow water again, this time moving east as I focused on what was ahead. I've been to all these weird places, and not even one at a place where I could truly relax. Hell, I even got killed in the beginning. Sleeping sent me to another level. I don't know why I have more than one life in this place, but it's better than dying on one day. On day one. Multiple times in a day even, I said to myself as I walked to the flooded station towards what I hope is the far east wall. Whatever this place is, it's different. It's bigger. Everything in this place is different. This one level alone had like 6 different areas of varying style. I'm guessing they all repeat somewhere down the line, I said as I looked at the almost pitch black flooded station in front of me. Let's see, 2 more pages. The outline of multiple pillars laying back in the darkness filled my peripheral vision as I listened to the sounds of danger while I walked. Each entity seems different too. They all behave similarly, but they all have their own minds. Especially that rotting reddish-brown thing that was hunting me earlier. And those weird dogs, I said as I smiled at the memories of my first initial reaction to a hound. Every place has some sort of purpose here. Everything seems to work together as one massive hive mind, but there's still one thing I don't get. Where are all these other people? Well, where are all the other people, I guess? There's no way I'm the only person who ended up in this place. Those reddish-brown creatures look similar to the human. Really similar to a human. I said as hundreds more questions poured into my mind. What if those creatures really once were a person? That means I'm going to have to be more aware of my physical and mental state. I said as I looked at my arms, holding them outwards as I stared at the hundreds of cuts, scratches, bumps, and bruises. Maybe if I ever escape this level, I can get another bag of supplies. Hopefully I find more gauze, too. I don't want to turn into one of those creatures in this place, that is. If that's what happens when you don't take care of yourself in this world. Hopefully I just read that. I said as I listened to my stomach growl, shooting a wave of pain through my lower chest and abdomen as I began to feel the pain of starvation. Really hope I find some food, too. I mean, I'm so hungry right now. Maybe there isn't just stale bread and that almond water stuff. Maybe there's other foods out there, somewhere. I said as I began to dream about a 5-course meal that was solely for my own enjoyment. Speaking of food, what about the levels and... Well, fuck. I messed that up. Speaking of food, where did the items and materials in this place come from? Does the world just spawn them into levels like some sort of video game? Is that where I am? In some sort of video game? I said as I continued walking. My heart soared as the faint outline of a staircase came into view up ahead. There's no fucking way! I said as I began to run, the sound of my feet hitting the water echoing through the station as I sprinted through the darkness for the staircase ahead. Even if it's not the exit, I just want to get out of this flooded station. I couldn't even drink any of the water, I said as hopes of being sent to a better level sprung forth in my mind. I approached the stairwell and slowed to a stop, staring at the crumbling stone steps as they led upwards into a wall of pitch-black nothingness. It leads to nothing, I said as my glimmer of hope began to sink. I have to try, though, I said as I began to slowly walk up the stairs. The bruises on my hips burned and stung as I made my way up the deteriorating steps. Well, I said as I stopped 2 steps before the wall of shadowy black. I guess this is it, I said softly as I glanced behind me. The stagnant water rippled as it flowed up against the bottom steps, appearing to quiver and sway as it became still over time. Here goes nothing, I said as I hesitantly walked up the last 2 steps as everything went around me. Fuck, I ruined this. Damn, I ruined. Oh my god, I said as I hesitantly walked up the last 2. I ruined it again. Sorry to ruin the suspense. I mean, that's literally the last fucking sentence. Here goes nothing, I said as I hesitantly walked up the last 2 steps. Damn, 2 is even spelled wrong. This is crazy. Last 2 steps as everything around me went dark. I hope you're ready for the concrete jungle, guys. Level 11. That's what's next. Yeah. Sorry for messing up so much in this one. This whole 16-hour compilation of the entire novel, maybe even 20 hours. I mean, these are all singular. And then you got the compilations of all the chapters in the arc. But then that 20-hour one that's coming when I finish all 92 chapters, just you wait. Man, see you guys in the next chapter. Have a good day. Chapter 20, The Concrete Jungle. Why level 11 isn't what you think. The darkness around me faded as I regained consciousness in the middle of a massive city. The buildings and skyscrapers seeming to reach for the pale blue sky as a cool breeze swept through the landscape. I stared in awe at the massive clusters of buildings around me, completely forgetting my hunger and pain as I stumbled forwards to get a better view. Holy shit, I gasped as I slowly turned a full circle in one spot. My mind filled with feelings of shock and curiosity as I stared at the hundreds of massive buildings stretching on around me. I staggered back, almost tripping over a metal rail behind me as I continued to gawk over the buildings around me. I snapped out of it and looked around, my eyes exploring the massive cracked roads as they wound around the city. Broken streetlights lined crumbling sidewalks as random bits of trash scattered themselves throughout the streets. What the hell is this place? I said as I turned to face the rail I almost tripped on. The deteriorating sign above the tunnel downwards read, "The Backways." That's what that place was? I choked as I backed away from the metal barricade, watching the darkness inside the staircase down with paranoia and fear. I'm not going back down to that horrible level, I said as I began to run, turning my back to the tunnel leading down to the forgotten metro as I sprinted down the empty streets. I need to leave this horrible place. I don't care if this level is a safe level. I just want to go home, I said as tears began racing down my cheeks. My heart pounded as my feet slapped the road's concrete Damn. 2-minute record again. My heart pounded as my feet slapped the road's cracked asphalt, leaving a trail of tears behind me as I tried to run from my problems. My vision blurred as I began to cry harder, continuing to run straight ahead as my head filled with thoughts of going home. I want to leave. I don't know what I did or why I'm here, but I don't like this place. I don't want to be here anymore, and I never want to come back. I sobbed as I slowed to a stop. My heart pounded in my chest as I took a few shaky breaths in. I want food and water, I mumbled softly as my stomach growled loudly. I glanced around the desolate cityscape around me to see a door leading into a nearby building. Maybe this place has supplies inside the buildings, I mumbled sadly as I began to walk over to the closed gray-colored door ahead of me. The sounds of wind filled the air as a feeling that I was not alone anymore began to set in. Is someone there? I called, looking around before running straight for the door. The sounds of my feet on the road surface was all I heard as I slowed down in front of the door, quickly grabbing the handle as I pulled it open. The door hinges screamed loudly, sending chills down my spine as I turned around, searching for any signs of life before slipping into the building. This place is so eerie already, I said as I let the door slam shut behind me. A cold draft swept around me as I slowly walked down the empty hallway. The white-colored walls were full of cracks and holes. The ceiling was crumbling and some of it was missing, really. I don't really think it's safe here. Isn't like 90% of this an OSHA violation already? I said as I glanced behind me. A massive chunk of ceiling laying on the floor was now left. In the past, the sparks flew from the light fixtures. The smell of dust and mold filled the air as I turned to face another door. I hesitated before pulling the handle, jiggling it before sighing. Locked, I muttered as I stared at the cracked wooden door in resentment. I took a deep breath before looking around for something to break the door down with. I gasped as my eyes fell on a rusted sledgehammer on the ground, covered by a chunk of ceiling tiles that lay abandoned in the hallway to deteriorate over time. I walked over to it and picked it up, getting my hand covered in dust and drywall in the process. Well, I hope this works, I said as I raised the hammer in the air, bringing it down on the center of the door with a loud crunch. The wood splintered outwards, revealing a main chamber on the first floor. There's furniture here? I cried as I began smashing down the door with the sledgehammer. My eyes locked on the old 1990s-style sofa and table ahead. I swung the sledgehammer over and over until a hole I could squeeze through was formed. That means there has to be supplies, too, I exclaimed as I burst through the splintered wood and entered the main lobby. I ran over to the sofa and looked around in awe. The inside of the room I was in was filled with 1980s to 1990s styles furniture. A thick layer of dust settling over everything as age swallowed the building whole. The air was dense and filled with dust and debris, giving a thin, cloudy look to everything. An empty elevator shaft blocked over with rusty metal bars lay to my right, confirming the building had more accessible floors somewhere. I ran over to what looked like a desk and stared in awe at the mass amount of items littering the desk drawers and surface. Almond water! I cried as I reached over the dusty wooden table part of the desk and grabbed a half-full bottle of almond water. The plastic container itself filled me with relief and joy as I removed the cap. The sweet smell of the liquid tickled my nose as I brought the bottle to my lips and took a swig. Holy shit, I needed that, I said as my body relaxed. My head stopped spinning as my stomach settled for the time being, content with the cool, refreshing liquid. There has to be more, I said as I ran around the corner of the desk, entering the little space inside as I pulled open the top drawer. A set of 2 batteries rolled to the front of the compartment as I gasped loudly. Batteries? I grabbed them instantly and dropped them in my pockets, hoping to find a backpack soon so I could carry things easier as I opened the next 2 drawers. I sifted through the piles of papers covered in unidentifiable symbols and words before shutting the bottom drawer, letting out a sigh of worry as I realized materials were here but still scarce on this level. I stood back up and scanned the top of the desk for resources. Nothing, I muttered as I stared at a pile of papers in front of me. This place seems weird, though. I scratched my head. Like it once had people here. I picked up one of the papers from the top of the pile and stared at the unidentifiable language it was written in. But not people. Other people. Some other species with its own language and way of life. I had a yawn. Damn. I set the paper back on the desk again before looking at the area around me. There is no way all of this just spawned in by itself, I muttered as I stared at the 1980s style furniture in the room that filled the room I was in. I began to walk over to the dust-covered sofa in the center of the room as I took in my surroundings. The walls of the lobby were a pale white, the pasty cream-colored wallpaper peeling and cracking in some areas as the smell of rotting plywood filled the air. The floor was made up of The floor was made up of cold white tile that was full of cracks and chunks of missing material. The air was cold and heavy, and the entire place smelled like aged ceramic glass and rotting wood. Seventh recording of the day. I'm running out of air. Jesus Christ. The lights that littered the ceiling resembled old office building fixtures with dim white fluorescent lighting hanging off of them. The furniture all looked right out of the 1980s as it was covered in a thick layer of dust. Well, at least it's something, I muttered as I plopped down on the dusty sofa. A cloud of dust billowed from the sofa cushions as my body put weight on the old, untouched furniture. I sneezed as the dust filled my nose, jerking my head forwards as I sneezed again. Shit, mumbled as I scrunched up my nose. The dust slowly settled back down around me as I stared at the broken elevator shaft. The metal gate blocking off the elevator was almost completely covered in rust and was missing entire pieces in some areas. This building has other floors, I guess. It seems like that from the elevator I'm seeing. That could mean more supplies and rooms, I said as I slowly rose from the couch I was sitting on. More dust floated in the air as I walked across the lobby towards the elevator shaft. I stopped at the rusted metal gate and peered down the shaft below. The deep chute down seemingly held no end or elevator and was filled with shadows and mold. Well, I'm not getting anywhere with that, I said as I stepped away from the useless tunnel down in front of me. I turned around and began scanning the lobby for signs of a stairwell, only to find nothing. So there is no other way to the other floors then, I said as I came to the realization that the entire building was made up of one floor, consisting of the lobby and back hallways I had entered through. Well, there are other buildings. There was no front... I went ahead. I said as I began making my way to the shattered door I had entered through. There was no front door and the entire lobby held no windows. Sorry? Man, my body's, attacking me. I've been reading for the past 3 hours now. I released 8 videos going all the way up to July 5th. I feel pretty accomplished, and it's only 12 o'clock in the morning. I quickly made my way back outside and looked around, searching for any threats or supplies that could be laying around somewhere. What the fuck you mean threats or Okay, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done after this chapter. Jesus Christ. This place is abandoned. There's nothing here, not even any trees or plant life. Sad as I stared at the dull concrete cityscape around me. The road ahead stretched on in both directions, branching off as it wound through the lifeless cityscape that made up the level. So I'm the only thing here, I said as feelings of despair and sadness began to set in. I began walking down the road, scanning the barren buildings around me as I searched for supplies and resources. The air grew heavy as the smell of aged asphalt and crumbling concrete filled the air around me. Does this place have a night cycle? I said as I watched the barren landscape grow darker in front of me. The warm, heavy air slowly grew... Sorry, I'm looking ahead because I know what's coming, I said as I watched the barren landscape grow darker in front of me. The warm, heavy air slowly grew cold as the ground became covered in shadows. This doesn't seem right. I should find somewhere to rest for the night, I said as I began to run, aiming for a building at the end of the road as I was on as the bright blue sky became a dull gray within minutes. The sounds of whispers surrounded me as I sprinted down the empty street to the front of the building ahead. 2 pages, and then I can finally go to sleep. Damn, I am so prepared to go to sleep and then record tomorrow night, if I feel like it, You only record when you're having fun. That's the YouTube way. But to continue. I don't know if any of these entity things come out when this place hits its apparent nighttime, but I don't want to stick around to find out. I cried as my feet slapped the asphalt. The air became thick and freezing cold as the sky grew dark, turning a dull, lifeless gray as an eerie fog set over the city. I gasped for air as I quickly approached the front door of the building I was going for, the lifeless steel wall that opened into a safe space, sitting quietly and silently as I closed in on it. I glanced around to see the thin fog sweeping through the city, the wave of light gray This is why I'm audio revising, because it sounds weird when you say it and not when you read it in your head. This book took 3 years to write. Of course there's mistakes. I turned to face the door and braced myself as I ran shoulder first into the locking mechanism. The door flew open, causing me to stumble forwards before crashing to the ground. I made it! I panted as I watched the heavy door slam shut behind me. The sounds of whispers filled the empty room I was in as the fog brushed against the bottom of the door. I took a deep breath before getting to my feet, brushing off my jeans as I looked around. The room I was in was covered with a dull white film of dust and mold spores, the scent of rotting concrete and mold filling my nose as my breath caught in my throat. The walls were made up of bumpy gray concrete and the floor was covered in unidentifiable stains and scratches. I stared at the cold gray concrete below my feet with a feeling of... I stared at the cold gray concrete below my feet with feelings of fear stemming from the deep scratches embedded in the ground. What? I shuddered. What made those indents? I choked as I began to think of about what actually lurked within this level. The smell of death filled the room as I glanced over at the door. The sounds of whispering had grown louder, now filling the entire city as it spread throughout the streets. The sounds of something wailing pierced my ears as I snapped out of it. This level isn't abandoned. Something dangerous lives here, I said as I slowly walked backwards away from the door in front of me. The sounds of scratching claws scraping against the road's asphalt pierced the air as I stumbled back, stopping as I stood against the far wall. It's scratching the road, like it's sharpening its claws. I choked as I stared at the door. The air grew freezing cold as the scratching stopped. Don't make any noise, I thought to myself as I stared at the door. The sounds of scratching started up again as the door slowly opened a bit, before slamming shut again. The air began to grow heavy again as the sounds grew further away, allowing me to relax just a bit. I have to get out of this level, I said as I looked around the empty room I was in. My eyes darted around frantically before landing on a rusted metal pipe covered in chunks of drywall and concrete. It had possibly fallen from the ceiling. But first, I needed a weapon for whatever is scratching in the dark. I quickly darted over to the metal pipe, grabbing it with one hand as I pulled it from the rubble. My head spun as I looked around nervously, an intense feeling of paranoia and dread filling me to my core. It's time to start dealing with this place once and for all, I said sternly as I tried to push the overpowering aura of fear away. What are you? I muttered as I thought of the thing that had brushed past me just moments ago. My chest felt heavy as my thoughts raced down an empty track, my stomach churning as I walked towards the door. The distant sounds of claws on asphalt continued to rattle the streets as I pushed open the door and walked out into the dead of night. Dun dun dun. Chapter 21. Scratches in the Dark. Why you should never go towards scratches in the Backrooms. The eerie fog that settled over the city poured around my legs as it dampened my jeans from the level of my knees downwards. I glanced around fearfully as I held my only source of protection, a rusted metal pipe. The air was freezing, goosebumps littering my arms and legs as the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I held the metal pipe at the ready, gripping it with both hands as I struggled to see through the fog and blanket of shadows that had settled over the lifeless, New record, 40 seconds before I stuttered. I held the metal pipe at the ready, gripping it with both hands as I struggled to see through the fog and blanket of shadows that had settled over the lifeless cityscape. I really wish that wretched creature that flooded from that flooded metro station hadn't taken my supply bag. I can't see, I muttered as I strained to see more than 10 feet in front of me. The sounds of nearby scratching pierced my ears as I stumbled back, my head jerking to the right as I spotted the Sorry. No AI. Real voice. I muttered as I strained to see more than 10 feet in front of me. The sounds of nearby scratching pierced my ears as I stumbled back, my head jerking to my right as I spotted the source of the terrifying sound. The creature was... 9th chapter of the day, I'm getting choked up. The creature was tall and hunched over, its frame was slender and thin as it lumbered through the fog, dragging a set of massive claws over the asphalt as it walked. The entity was all black and had no visible face or identifiers. Its claws were long and razor-sharp and appeared to be immensely cared for as the creature sharpened them the second they grew dull. The creature didn't seem to have a particular task in mind as it aimlessly lumbered towards me. That thing is huge, I hissed as I gripped the metal pipe with both hands, preparing to fight. The creature appeared to glance up as it abruptly stopped in its tracks. Shit, I muttered as it emitted a low growl. The tall, slender creature began to scratch its claws over the asphalt as it stumbled directly towards me. I took a step back and held the pipe in an attack stance. The creature lunged at me, seeming to have been waiting to see if I was a threat as it swung its set of razor-sharp claws directly at my stomach. I leapt back, just barely dodging the attack as it swung again. The razor-sharp claws whistled through the air as I ducked, the set of deadly talons whizzing over my head. I kicked off the ground and darted left, sprinting down the street as I grew more and more afraid of the lethal force behind me. It knows what it's doing, I cried as vivid images of the creature attacking in the direction of weak spots and vital areas flashed across my mind. I glanced behind me to see the entity was close behind me, its claws held ready for multiple lethal attacks as it pursued its weak and vulnerable target. I darted under an overhang as I wove through the concrete pillars of the city, glancing behind me to see the creature was smart enough to avoid following me. Smart enough to avoid following me and getting slowed down as it began to gain on me on the left side. I began gasping for air as panic and fear spread through my body, death brushing right by me as it began pulling me in. I'm 10 chapters deep for the day. It's been 4 hours. Sorry I'm stuttering. I have to escape this level, now, I cried as I ducked, darting to the right as the creature attacked. My heart rate soared as the creature's claws effortlessly cut through the thick concrete pillar, crossing the overhang and collapsed behind me. A powerful crash shook the ground as I ran as fast as I could for the closest door. The creature's claws scraped the road as it appeared to be sharpening them for another attack. The metal pipe in my hands bounced against my leg as I closed in on the door. I can lose it, I cried as I glanced behind me. The creature swung, its claws whizzing past my face as dust struck down next to me. Holy shit! I cried as I slammed into the wall, flying through the doorway as the creature's claws obliterated the wall behind me. The smell of smoke filled the air as I scrambled to my feet. The metal pipe laid a few feet in front of me as the creature slashed more of the wall away. I just read that. Dust and debris formed the cloud that filled the bottom floor as the creature made its way into the building. I sprinted forwards, leaning down just slightly as I grabbed the metal pipe and booked it for a nearby stairwell I had seen when I came in. The creature continued close behind as its claws dug deep into the floor, sharpening them as they scraped across the solid concrete. That's what made those marks, I cried as I entered the stairwell, glancing behind me to see the creature finish sharpening its claws on the floor as it sped up instantly. I cried out as I sprinted up the stairwell, turning the first corner as the creature's claws tore into the wall as it pursued close behind. It doesn't stop, I cried as it swung at the back of my legs. I stumbled forwards, almost tripping on the stairs as its claws shredded the section of the metal railing behind me. The stairwell grew cold as the entity grew closer behind me, its stamina not seeming to have any end as I began to slow down. It's gonna catch me! It's gonna catch me! I cried as I gasped for air, my energy running low as I ascended the 7th floor stairwell. My shoes slapped against the concrete stairs as I ran, the entity scraping its claws against the concrete stairs as it pursued, leaving deep scratches in the staircase behind it. I glanced over my shoulder as I stumbled over each step, my body growing clumsy and sore as I became aware of how tired I was. So this is where I die, I said to myself as the entity swung a clawed hand at my back. Things seemed to move in slow motion as the creature's claws tore into my shirt, the razor talons tearing into the surface of my flesh as the back of my t-shirt was torn to shreds. The oxygen in my lungs seemed to freeze as I tripped over the last step on the 12th floor, the entity behind me swiping its claws over my head as I flew face first into the wall, my body screaming in pain as the fresh gashes bled instantly. My eyes were wide with fear as I hit the wall, my body hitting the solid concrete like a sack of potatoes as everything went dark. Segment 2. I regained consciousness on the abandoned stairwell of the building I was attacked in, groaning in pain as my slowly healing wounds tore open as I moved, the giant gashes in my back beginning to bleed again as I looked around me. It's gone, I said softly as I slowly got to my feet. I grabbed the metal pipe from the place it laid a few feet away from me and gripped it in my right hand. The air was still cold and something still felt off. My eyes darted around the empty stairwell. The staircase is in front of me, going up and down in different directions. I can't confirm that, though, I said as I gripped my weapon tightly with 2 hands. My eyes landed on the deep scratches etched into the concrete. It cut through that concrete like it was paper. I choked as I took a step away from the deep gashes in the wall. The metal pipe in my hands felt useless now, as the realization that the thing that hid within this level was extremely dangerous and lethal. Why did it leave me, though? I said as I turned to face the wall I had run into, knocking myself out mid-chase by running into solid concrete. Something isn't right, I said as my eyes darted around frantically. The stairwell was dull and lifeless. The only signs of something being here was the deep scratches in the walls and stairs and the puddle of blood that I was laying in moments earlier. I have to go back outside, I said as I began rushing down the staircase. The quick and sudden sounds of my footsteps as I raced down the steps echoed through the stairwell. I turned the corner and stopped in my tracks, my eyes landing on the mutilated body of a hound that laid at the bottom of the stairwell. Fuck, it did that? I choked as I stumbled back. The hound's neck was torn to shreds, and it was almost completely disemboweled as its dark, bluish-gray blood staining the concrete below. Deep gashes had been etched into the hound's body in multiple areas, its wounds causing it to bleed out. No, I have to get out of here, I choked as I stumbled past the mutilated corpse and went through the door out of the stairwell. I took one last look at the body behind me. The sense of fear and shock for what the creature on this level actually did to the things it came in contact with, slamming deep into my soul. It's daytime, I said as I sprinted through the empty first floor and over the rubble from the scratcher's claws that had obliterated the concrete wall just a few hours ago. I didn't know how long I was out, but it was daytime, meaning a lot of hours had passed. At least that's what I felt. I kicked off of the fallen chunks of concrete as I sprinted as fast as I could down the street. The lifeless city seeming more dangerous than it ever did before as my only weapon bounced against my thigh. I darted around the corner, running down a long, winding street that branched off into multiple sub-areas to more of the level. The expanse of winding asphalt streets stretched out in front of me as I ran as fast as I could away from the building I had almost lost my life in just a few hours ago. My heart pounded as the scratch marks on my back burned with immense pain. Fresh blood continued to soak my shredded shirt as my wounds failed to fully heal over and over, causing me to grow lightheaded and fatigued. I need a place to rest and hide, I said with deep breaths as I glanced around, scanning the buildings around me as I ran for a safe place to escape or hide the next night's prowler with. My eyes stung and teared up as a powerful gust of wind swept through the barren cityscape, the cold rush of air winding through the buildings as I passed through the dull concrete wasteland. My chest burned as I began to slow down, my lungs screaming for me to stop and rest as I came to a stop. I can't. No. I won't survive another attack when night falls. I need food, water, and a safe place to settle down for the night, I said as I looked at my surroundings. Massive crumbling buildings and apartment complexes lined the streets as they reached for the sky, the dull-colored walls contrasting with the blue expanse of clear skies above. The apartments might have more supplies, if anything, I said as I glanced up at the clear sky. At the sky. The air began to grow cold as the blanket of shadows began to settle over the streets once again. Better now than never, I said as I began running across the empty street towards an nearby abandoned apartment complex. The sounds of whispers filled the air as the city began to fill with shadows. This better work, I muttered as I rammed into the front door, breaking the lock as it burst open, causing me to sprawl out on the front floor of the main lobby. Floor of the main lobby, damn. The scratchy gray carpet burned my skin as I scrambled to my feet. The fog slowly swept through the city as the landscape fell to the shadows. I need to get as far away from the door as possible, I said as I quickly walked across the lobby towards the exposed stairwell. Ahead. The air was freezing cold and the lobby smelled of mold and past smoke. The floor was made up of scratchy gray carpet that was covered in stains and scratch marks. These things were everywhere, I said as I stared at the entry desk. The old wooden desk was completely shredded, split in 2 parts by a set of sharp claws. I began speed-walking through the staircase as the sound of claws on concrete pierced the air. I darted through the stairwell door and slammed it shut, the sound of scratching stopping abruptly as I alerted the creature that its next meal was nearby. Shit, I said as I left the door behind me, darting up the staircase as I held the metal pipe in an attack position. Damn, I'm done after this chapter. I've been reading for 4 hours, bro. My leg muscles burned as I climbed floor after floor, slowing down on the 7th floor as I tried to catch my breath. What the fuck is wrong with me? I said as I glanced down the stairwell at the way I came. The sounds of scratching pierced my ears as I realized the creature was now inside. It's hunting, I said fearfully as I ran away from the stairwell behind me. Pushing through the old wooden doors, I entered the 7th floor hallway and began trying to escape the predator that was close behind. Chapter 22 releases tomorrow. For people in the compilation, it releases in 3 seconds. Chapter 22. A predator hunts at midnight. Why you should never agitate scratchers in the backrooms. I sprinted down the hallway of the 7th floor, my feet slapping the faded red carpet as I ran as fast as I could for the end of the apartment complex. The sounds of the door for the entrance of the stairwell exploding off of its hinges filled the staircase as it floated down the hall and into my ears. It's here, I said dreadfully as I darted down the empty hallway to the end of the corridor. The pale beige walls of the apartment's hallways became a blur as I slowed to a stop at the end of the hallway. I have to hide. If it sees me, I'm definitely dead, I said as I rushed to the closest door and pushed it open, fumbling with the knob before entering the forgotten space beyond the doorway. The air was musty and felt heavy, a humid cloud settling over my skin as I entered the room and locked the door behind me. Under the bed, I said quickly as I walked over to the large queen-sized bed in the middle of the room, the intricately designed wooden headboard sitting against the wall as it lay left to rot. I crouched down, lying on my stomach as I crawled into the cramped space under the bed frame. The mattress smelled strongly of mold and aged sweat as I squeezed underneath it. The cramped space hurt the large wounds embedded in my back as I pushed myself into the claustrophobic space to hide, the wooden boards holding the mattress and the frame digging deep into my back as I hid in the darkness and waited. 10 minutes passed with no sounds or signs of the creature, my lungs burning as I held my breath the best I could, starving my body of oxygen as I tried my best to survive. Where is it? I hissed as my head spun, my heart pounding in my chest as the feelings of uneasiness and restlessness filled my entire being. My eyes darted around frantically, scanning for any signs of the creature as I waited, my body and mind slowly growing sick of hiding in such a cramped and uncomfortable space in complete darkness. My heart stopped as the sounds of scratching filled the air, the chilling feeling of death brushed past me as I hid in the shadows. It's literally on the same floor as me already? I said nervously as my eyes darted around the darkness. The only things I could see were the faint outlines of the normal house furniture shrouded in shadows. The sound of scratching stopped abruptly as the sounds of another entity floated down the hallway. There's a hound here too? I cried, forgetting the need to be quiet entirely as my voice pierced the air. The sounds of both entities completely stopped before the sounds of claws tearing into flesh exploded into the hallway. The scratcher tearing into the hound's body as the sounds of ripping flesh and blood splattering made me sick to my stomach. The sound of yelping and cries of pain pierced my ears as the sickening smack of the hound's body against the walls filled the hallway. Everything was silent for a moment before the sounds of something slowly moving down the empty hallway floated through the air. My eyes filled with tears as an overwhelming worry that this level would be my final destination in this place. What? That was unfinished. I want to go home, I whispered sadly as tears raced down my cheeks, soaking the crusty red carpet of the apartment floor's room as I watched the door with overwhelming amounts of fear and sadness. The sounds of claws scraping against the crumbling concrete walls of the 7th floor filled my ears as I whimpered in fear. The scratching stopped as the creature stopped in front of the door, its chilling, uneven breathing drifting through the air as the door slowly creaked open. The room I was in slowly filled with light from the hallway, the bright yellow glow stopping inches from my face as I finally got a look at the creature. It was different from the one I had run into before, its claws resembling a series of sharp, curved talons with a black tint. The creature seemed to be undead, and was slender and thin, its long arms hanging down to its knees as it stood as tall as the door. Its eyes were human-like and filled with a burning lust to kill. My breath caught in my throat as the creature appeared to scan the room in front of it, its 2 nose holes opening and closing as it appeared to sniff out the area as well. Its skin was a pale gray, and it was covered in scars and stitched wounds. These things are like reddish creatures, those ones I saw in the back way. They're human at one point, I thought to myself as I stared at the terrifying predatory creature in front of me, its slender and intimidating hunched-over posture paralyzing me with fear. The creature looked around the room again before abruptly stopping with its eyes in my direction. Shit. My mind raced as I tried to think of what to do, my heart jumping into my throat as the creature slowly ducked under the doorway and lumbered into the room. The air grew incredibly cold as it made a wailing sound, the eerie call sending chills through my entire body. My eyes watched the creature with fear as it slowly lumbered over to the bed, stopping a few inches in front of it as it emitted a low snarl. "It knows I'm here," I said in my thoughts as I listened to the creature begin to detect its next victim. My head spun as the sounds of sharp claws ripping deep into the mattress above me pierced my ears. My heart soared, adrenaline shooting through my blood as the chilling sounds of tearing fabric shot throughout the room. "I'm trapped," I thought to myself as the overwhelming feelings of dread and fear began to crush me to the core. I choked back tears as my life flashed before my eyes, the memories of my home being replaced with my experiences in the backrooms. I whimpered softly, causing the sounds of scratching to cut short as the creature appeared to search the area again. Its thin, bony feet lay just a few feet away from my face as it snarled loudly. My body screamed with fear as I began to cry, tears streaming down my face as I struggled to make no noise whatsoever. The creature shifted, its feet moving away from me as it lumbered for the door, turning its back to me as it slowly moved away from my location. My chest heaved as I struggled to hold my breath in longer, my lungs burning as I grew lightheaded. The recent scratches in my back stung as they became soaked with sweat. The creature wailed as it exited the room, seeming to sound like it was pained by the fact it couldn't kill again. "Please leave," I whispered as those words filled my thoughts completely, my body trembling as I shook with fear. My vision blurred as tears poured down my face, my body giving up as I let my emotions loose. The slasher lumbered down the hallway and into the distance as I cried for my life in the dark. Sweat soaked my clothes as I sobbed silently, growing more and more tired as I exhausted any remaining energy I had left. My head spun as I grew weak, my eyes slowly moving around the room as my senses waved in and out. My entire body went numb as I passed out from exhaustion, my body laying underneath the bed in the dark as I left reality entirely, falling into a deep sleep as I drifted into the voids within my mind until I awoke again. Chapter 23, Claws That Cut Deep. Why you are never going to be prepared for a slasher encounter in the backrooms. I woke up under the bed with no memory of where I was or what happened. My entire body was extremely sore as I groggily crawled out from under the bed. "What happened?" I mumbled as I slowly got to my feet in the dark room. The air around me was cold, and there was a sense of uneasiness that still remained even after the creature had gone. "The monster," I said as my eyes darted over to the door. My breath caught in my throat as I saw the deep gashes embedded deep in the wall, the creature possibly having sharpened its claws on its way out using the rough concrete that made up the building. I looked around the room I was in, struggling to see in the dark as I tried to take in my most recent surroundings. The bed I was under was completely destroyed, the mattress was shredded to pieces, the fluffy material inside littering the bedspread and the floor. "It did that?" I cried, my heart jumping to my throat once again as I stared at the shredded mattress that was just above me when the creature had searched the room. Sorry, I had to take a deep breath. The deep claw marks in the mattress were almost unrecognizable, due to the state the mattress was in after the creature attacked it out of pure frustration. The scratch marks in my back burned as I stretched, the sound of my body cracking and popping as my bones and muscles moved for the first time in hours, filling the room as I floated down the hallway. I looked around, letting myself relax a bit as I searched for a light switch. "Maybe there's supplies in these rooms," I muttered as I walked over to the dresser on the opposite side of the room, opening the top drawer to reveal a beat-up flashlight. Sorry, got a notification that distracted me. "Already?" I cried as I grabbed the flashlight from its spot inside the dresser and flicked the power button. The flashlight flickered before turning on, sending a dim beam of white light to the left wall as it lit up a small section of the room. I powered the flashlight back off, smiling as I slid it into my back pocket. If only I had a backpack, then I wouldn't have to put all this stuff in my pockets. I wish that wretch hadn't taken it previously, I said to myself as I opened the next two drawers. The two middle drawers had nothing but dust and mold inside of them, possibly having no purpose at all compared to the top and bottom drawer of the dresser. I pulled open the bottom drawer to find a roll of gauze and a set of batteries. "Yes!" I cried as I grabbed the gauze and put it next to me on the ground. The air grew colder as I looted the rest of the drawers, grabbing batteries and scraps that I could possibly use at one point as I scoured the room for resources. I stopped at the foot of the bed, gripping the gauze in my right hand as I looked around. "There doesn't seem to really be anything else here," I said softly as I stared at the set of sliding closet doors in front of me. I glanced around nervously, my eyes landing on the shredded mattress just a few feet away from me as memories of my close encounters with death on this level flooded my mind. I swallowed, staring at the half-open door that led out of the room as my throat went dry. I have to go out there. Even if that thing is smart and patient enough to wait for me there could be more supplies. I said as I began walking for the door. My head spun, my vision blurring a bit as a painful headache started up. The sound of my gym shoes walking on the carpet floated through the door and down the hallway as I stopped in front of the doorway. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to stop as I slowly pulled the door open even more, letting more light into the room as I peered out into the hallway. My eyes stung as they slowly adjusted to the intense change of lighting before my vision cleared, allowing me to properly scan the hallway ahead for threats. The hound? I choked as I stumbled back into the room. The door swung open a bit more as my heels dug into the carpet. The mutilated body of the hound remained unmoving in the hallway, its darkish blue blood staining the walls and floor around it as the deep scratch marks embedded in its body showed an even bigger threat was out there. That thing did that? I cried as I stumbled back over to the door, looking into the hallway again. The scratchy red carpet was stained with dark blue splotches as the hound's body lay rotting away on the ground of the 7th floor hallway. I stared at the mutilated corpse in horror, my eyes staring directly at the scratch marks that went through the hound's entire body. That thing's claws cut deep, I mumbled fearfully as I stepped into the hallway. There were no windows, so I didn't know what time of day it was, but I needed more supplies, creature of death or not. Just go to the next room over, I choked as I continued to stare at the shredded body of the hound up ahead in the middle of the hallway. I fumbled with the doorknob on the door to my left before pushing the door open, entering the room directly next to the one I was hiding in. The overpowering stench of mold and rotting carpet hit me like a truck as I staggered back. Holy shit, this room stinks! I choked as tears filled my eyes. I stared into the darkness and observed the interior of the room I had to enter next, spotting multiple items I possibly needed. I really need supplies, though. I'm not going to escape the creature on this level if I'm starved to death or dehydrated, I said sternly as I entered the room. Sorry. The floorboards under the carpet creaked as I walked across the room, making my way to the dresser on the far wall. I slipped the flashlight out of my pocket and turned it on, shining the dim blue. Damn, I'm sorry. It took 5 minutes for me to mess up. I slipped the flashlight out of my pocket and turned it on, shining the dim beam of light in the direction of the dresser as I blindly walked through the darkness. Dust and mold spores filled my nose as the urge to sneeze came over me, causing me to slow down and scrunch my nose. No, don't sneeze, I muttered as I tried to hold back the oncoming loud noise that would alert any nearby entities. I sniffed, making it worse as I shook my head fearfully. Within seconds, I couldn't hold back anymore, my head jerking forwards as I sneezed loudly. My eyes blurred as I grew lightheaded. I told you not to sneeze, I said to myself angrily as I looked around, shining my flashlight towards the door. I stared at the doorway with a growing sense of dread as the sounds of movement filled the air. I darted over to the dresser, crouching down as I clicked off my flashlight. The room was bathed in darkness as I stared at the open door, watching the hallways for any sign of life as I looked ahead dreadfully. The wooden legs of the dresser dug into my waist as I crouched down in the shadows, waiting for death to come prowling as I listened carefully. The distant sounds of movement grew fainter as whatever creature lurked within the very halls I was exploring gave up searching for the source of the noise. I waited for a few minutes, remaining crouched in the corner as I stayed to confirm the coast was truly clear. Fucking idiot, I muttered to myself as I slowly got to my feet. My calves and thighs burned as my head spun, a powerful wave of lightheadedness taking over me as I stumbled, almost losing my balance as my body adjusted to the sudden changes. I gripped my flashlight in my right hand, hesitantly flicking it back on as I turned to face the dresser. The old wooden drawers were covered in a layer of unidentifiable bacteria, possibly a species of mold only found here, and the brass knobs were covered in an almost black layer of grime. Moment of truth, I mumbled as I opened the first drawer. The top compartment was empty, making me exhale through my nose angrily. I opened the second drawer, revealing a pile of broken glass. This room has jack shit, I said angrily as I opened the next drawer. Nothing. I stared at the bottom drawer, crouching down slightly as something deep in my mind told me it wasn't worth opening. Final drawer, I said hesitantly as I wrapped my fingers around the brass knob and pulled, opening the drawer. Holy shit! I cried as a beat-up combat knife with a black rubber handle revealed itself, the weapon sitting in the darkness as it laid in the back corners of the drawer. There's no fucking way, I said as I grabbed the knife handle and lifted it out of the drawer, shining my flashlight beam over as I stared at the weapon in my hands in awe. I knew there were weapons here. I fucking knew it, cried as I turned the knife over, staring at the sharp metal blade as I grinned with excitement and pure pride. My legs felt weak as I stood up, gripping the combat knife tightly in my left hand as I shined my flashlight over the bed next to me. The covers are matted and torn, as if something had shredded them at some point, and the mattress is a sickeningly dirty yellow. I guess it was kind of worth it, I muttered as I glanced down at the knife in my hand, still getting over the intense shock I felt when I first saw the helpful weapon lying deep in the back of the dresser's bottom drawer. I stared ahead, shining my light at the closet doors at the far end of the room before snapping out of it. If I want to continue making progress, I need another supply bag, I said to myself sternly as I reminded myself of my main goal. Fuck, I heard something in the dark, damn. Fucking 10 o'clock at night. I exited the room slowly, clicking on my flashlight as I entered the hallway, glancing around nervously as I scanned for any threats. The room across from the one I was in should be fine, I said as I quickly crept across the hallway, pushing through the door straight across from the room I had just left as I entered the next apartment. The air was heavy and dense, and the stench of dust and old furniture filled my nose. Every single one of these rooms stinks, I muttered as I scrunched my nose, trying to get used to the sudden change in smell. I held the knife at the ready as I slowly crept through the darkness, not wanting to turn my flashlight on again until I could be sure the room was empty. "Anyone?" I said softly as I looked around. The room is completely void of life. The thick, dense air seemed to have been the result of the apartment being left alone for years upon years. "Nope, should be safe," I mumbled as I flicked my flashlight on, shining the dim beam of light at the closet doors. The sounds of snarling came from behind as I whipped around. "The bed!" My mind screamed as I came face to face with the hound. The creature had locked eyes with me, staring me directly down as it prepared to attack. "Don't move," I said to myself as I maintained eye contact, gripping my combat knife tightly. The hound snarled before jumping at me, its clawed feet aimed at my neck. I dove to the side, swinging the combat knife as I rolled to the ground. The blade cut through the hound's chest with ease, splattering blue blood all over the side of the bed and the floor. The hound yelped in pain as it crashed to the ground, the gash in its chest pouring blood all over the carpet. The hound snarled angrily, its thirst for blood now unstoppable as it lunged at my neck with the razor-sharp teeth. I rolled to the right, swinging my knife at the hound's neck as it kicked back, losing its footing as the blade sliced through its main arteries. Blue blood splattered onto the walls as I scrambled to my feet. The hound snarled angrily before whimpering in pain, the 2 deep gashes in its body causing it to begin to bleed out. "That's what you get, you stupid bitch!" I cried as I stared down at the creature with its thirst to kill. "For ruining my fucking life!" I screamed as I lunged forward, slashing outwards with my blade torn in the hound's face and neck. Its blood splattered onto my clothes and face as I swung one last time, slicing through the hound's chest as I sunk my blade deep into its heart. The hound's body went limp as its blood pooled around it. The creature laying dead as the life left its soulless black eyes. It's what every one of the fucking creature in this place fucking is gonna deal with. Damn, I ruined it. I'm sorry. That's what every fucking creature in this fucking place is going to deal with. I'm fucking done with this place. I cried as I stared at the lifeless body in front of me, gripping the blood-covered combat knife tightly as I panted heavily. My chest heaved as I snapped out of my blind rage, stumbling back as I stared at the body of the hound that lay near my feet. Deep slashes and cuts covered the body of the creature as its blood soaked everything around it. Its eyes stared lifelessly ahead, its blank stare aimed at the wall to my left. Shit. Fuck, what? Shit. God. Did I just do that? I choked as I dropped. I keep hearing fucking noises, dude. I choked as I dropped the knife, the blood-covered blade falling to the ground as I fell to my knees. My head spun as I stared at the cut-up corpse in front of me, my throat going dry as I choked back tears. What? What is this place doing to me? I choked as I stared at the mutilated body that laid a few feet away. My chest heaved as I grabbed the knife off the ground, gripping the rubber handle tightly as I leapt to my feet. "I need to get out of here," I cried as I hastily looked around in the darkness. The shadows surrounding me began to feel heavy and painful as I sprinted through the door. "I need to get out of here," I repeated, my head spinning as thousands of emotions poured into me at once. Tears streamed down my face as I blindly ran into the hallway, kicking off the ground as I darted straight down the empty corridor. My feet slapped the carpet as the hound's blood began to dry into my clothes. "I need to get out of here," I choked as my throat ran dry, my mind going numb as my heart pounded furiously in my chest. "I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here. I repeated. What the fuck? I repeated. Sorry, that is a typo. I'm deleting it. I repeated, my voice sounding completely dead and lifeless as I stared blankly ahead at the door leading into the stairwell. I ran past the mutilated body of the hound that got caught by the scratcher, my shoes becoming stained with the creature's blue blood as I sprinted past the shredded corpse. I need to get out of here, I said as I slammed into the door, pushing through the doorway as I ran into the stairwell. I gripped the combat knife tightly in my right hand as I sprinted down the stairs, my feet slapping the cold concrete as I hurriedly made my way down the staircase. I slowed down as Fuck, I'm so close to the end, dude. I slowed down as my lungs burned, entering the first floor stairwell as I burst through the lobby door. Shit, I said as I muttered as my heart caught in my chest. Fucking hell. The slasher from before stood in the lobby, hunched over the mutilated body of an unidentifiable entity that was likely caught by it the night before. I gripped the combat knife as I darted Man, I wouldn't be surprised if people clicked off the video by now. It's like the climax, and I fucked it up. I gripped the combat knife tightly as I darted right, running along the far wall as I made my way to a set of double doors. The slasher howled, sending chills down my spine as its chilling cry pierced the air. It dropped the mutilated corpse in its hands and turned. Its eyes locked on the stairwell doors as they slammed shut. The loud crash echoed through the lobby as I slipped through the set of double doors, letting them close behind me as I darted down a dimly lit hallway with crumbling concrete walls. I need to get out of here, I said fearfully as the sounds of the slasher quickly approaching the doors I had escaped through filled my ears. The sounds of my footsteps echoed down the empty hallway as I approached a left turn. I can't let it see me, I said to myself as I darted left, tripping over my own feet as I crashed into a dead end. The air around me changed in temperature massively, the air becoming dense and humid as I went through the wall, somehow transporting me to somewhere else as everything went dark. Y'all ain't ready for what's coming next, dude. Y'all ain't ready. Chapter 24, The Electrical Station. Why you should never mess with generators in the backrooms. My vision cleared as I found myself standing in the middle of an empty room lined with electrical generators and wiring. What the? I muttered as I turned a full 360 degrees around, taking in my surroundings. The room I was in was dimly lit, a small amount of light coming from a single light fixture that hung on a wiry black chain. The air was cold and heavy, and the smell of sulfur and old metal surrounded me. My eyes struggled to see in the dark as the sounds of steam being released from machinery in the distance pierced the air. Chills went through my entire body as I gripped my combat knife tightly, holding on to my only source of comfort at the time as the sounds of settling machinery and creaking pipes surrounded me from all sides. The air grew warmer as a cloud of steam burst from a nearby pipe, startling me as I dropped my weapon to the ground. The knife clattered as it hit the cold concrete, skidding a few feet away as I stumbled to the side. The loud sounds of machinery and metal on rock pierced the air as I struggled to keep my focus. I quickly made my way over to the knife and picked it up, scanning its surface for dents or cracks as I listened to the sounds that echoed off the walls from everywhere nearby. I heard you don't like this place, I muttered as I slid my knife into my pocket, keeping it at the ready but out of harm's way as I glanced at my flashlight in my other hand. I flicked it on, the beam of light flickering frantically before vanishing. Great, my fucking light doesn't work either, I said angrily as I hit the side of my flashlight with frustration. The light flickered multiple times, struggling to power on before it died completely. I growled in frustration as I fumbled in my pockets for a battery. I yanked a worn-out set of dark blue batteries out of my pocket and crouched down, centering my flashlight on the concrete as I strained to see the label on the battery pack. The label was too faded to read, and the realization of this made me exhale in frustration. This place is so fucking annoying, I muttered as I placed the batteries on the ground next to me, watching as they rolled slightly before coming to a stop. I popped the battery cover off the flashlight, setting the black plastic panel on the floor as I popped the batteries into their slots, one by one. I pressed the second battery into place before sliding the panel back on, waiting till I heard it click shut before staring into the distance. The walls were lined with pipes and wires, and some areas of the room were completely filled with unidentifiable machinery. Please work, I mumbled as I flicked the power switch in the on position. The flashlight flickered multiple times before sending a bright beam of light straight in front of me, revealing a large set of metal bars that blocked my intended way out of the room I was in. Okay then, I said as I stared at the large metal gate that blocked my only visible way out. Glanced around, shining the flashlight over the walls of pipes and air ducts before spotting a lever. There? I said confusedly as I walked over to the control panel. Dust billowed outwards from my feet as my shoes slapped the cold concrete ground. Please tell me this does something, I said nervously as I flipped the switch. The sounds of machinery powering on filled the room as a bright red light began flashing to my left. I stared at the miniature bulb as it flashed red in a steady, slow pattern. I watched as the machine whirred, the knobs and exhaust ports powering on as the device slowly powered on. I shined my flashlight at the large rusted gates in front of me, waiting for them to open. It's not... I was cut off by the sounds of gears crunching behind me, startling me as I almost dropped my flashlight. Shit, I said as I backed away from the machine. Smoke poured out of the control panel as the machine buzzed and whirred, seeming to be malfunctioning as I stumbled backwards. My flashlight pointed at the device as it appeared to collapse in on itself. The sounds of gears crunching pierced the air as the smoke covered the ceiling. It's gonna explode, I choked as I ran over to the metal bars. My flashlight waved around, shining its beam of light at the ground as I struggled to squeeze through the bars. It's going to explode, I cried, terror filling my voice as I squeezed through the bars, my skin painfully rubbing against the rusted metal as the sound of mechanical malfunctioning filled the chamber. I sucked in my stomach, my cheeks pressing against the bars as my body painfully rubbed against the gate. The sounds of the machine collapsing grew louder as I pushed off the ground, squeezing half of my body through the gate as the smell of smoke and burning wiring filled my nose. Tears stung my eyes as the overpowering stench of smoke and rusted metal filled my senses. Please, I don't want to die, not here, I cried frantically as I sucked in as much of my body as I could in an attempt to help me squeeze through the bars easier. My chest screamed as my skin rubbed against the rusted metal gate, my arms squeezing through the bars as I shoved myself onto the other side. I hit the ground with a sickening thud as my flashlight flew from my hands and shut off. The batteries exploding out of their compartment as my flashlight rolled into the darkness. The smell of smoke filled the area I had just gotten into as I scrambled to my feet, my skin burning with immense pain as I stumbled forwards. I have to get... The machine behind me exploded, a powerful wave of heat crashing in my back as I was sent flying forwards. The air was knocked from my lungs as everything went dark. Segment 2. What happened? I groaned painfully, struggling to get to my feet as I laid sprawled out on the concrete in the dark. My head pounded as my back stung with excruciating pain, the scratch marks in the previous level not responding well with the overpowering blast of heat that had burned into them just a few seconds ago. I touched my face tenderly, my fingertips becoming soaked in fresh blood as I touched my bleeding nose and busted lip. My eyes burned as I stared at the emptiness around me, dust and debris having filled my eyes and nose after the explosion. Fuck, I muttered as I slowly got to my feet, stumbling around as I struggled to stand up properly. Fresh blood slowly streamed down from my nose and lip, dripping onto the concrete as I staggered towards my flashlight. I limped through the darkness before falling to the ground, my knees scraping against the concrete as I hit the floor with a sickening and painful thud. My head spun as I reached for my flashlight, my fingers scraping the concrete as I smeared blood over the cold surface. I clawed at the ground, pulling my bruised and battered body forwards as I crawled towards my flashlight. I can't move, I groaned as wave after wave of intense pain crashed over me. My fingertips bled as I grabbed the flashlight, clawing at the ground as I gripped my only source of light in my right hand. My chest heaved as I laid on the ground, too weak to stand up or move anymore as I stared into the darkness. My combat knife dug into my leg as I moaned in pain. I need to get up, I said weakly as I stared at the dark abyss in front of me. The sea of shadows that surrounded me appeared to crush me down, pressing me to the floor as my wounds bled fresh blood. The taste of metal filled my mouth as I closed my lips, spitting blood onto the floor as I coughed painfully. My body shook with starvation and pain as I slowly crawled to a nearby wall. The air was warm, and I began to sweat as the humidity weakened me even more. I can't stay here, I said weakly as I stared into the shadows. My back propped up against the wall. Blood soaked my clothes as I stared into the darkness, my body being crushed down by the overpowering waves of pain that continued to fall over me. I My vision faded in and out as my head grew more and more lightheaded. My thoughts faded out of view as the darkness surrounded me. The flashlight fell from my hands as my body went limp and everything went white. Segment 3. I woke up inside an empty hallway filled with copper pipes. Did I die? I cried as I looked around frantically. My head was heavy and my wounds had all healed up completely. I died. I choked as I slumped back against the wall. The uneven brick dug into my back as I stared down at the empty steampunk-style hallway that stretched on in front of me. Where's my stuff? I said nervously as I leapt to my feet. I felt around in my pockets to find nothing but the combat knife I had on me when I died. My flashlight, I said softly as I stared at the shadows that filled the area around me. The pipes groaned behind me as I pulled the combat knife out of my jeans pocket, holding it at the ready as I looked around. I turned around to face the hallway behind me, my eyes running along the uneven brick walls as I followed the metal pipes as they stretched into the distance. I don't remember what happened. Any of it, I muttered as I glanced down at the combat knife I held in my right hand. My mind was filled with thousands of questions as I tried to figure out where I was and what I was doing here. This looks like that one level with all the pipe walls, I said as I looked around. The ceiling was uneven and lined with dim, bowl-shaped lights that hung from a series of metal bars and rods that filled the support of the crumbling brick roof. Sorry, I ran out of breath. This is my 5th video of the night. I glanced over at the pipes next to me, running my finger over the cold metal as I stared at the mysterious machinery that filled the hallway I woke up in. I lost some of my memory, I said as the realization that when I died, I lost my knowledge of this place hit me like a truck. I staggered back, bumping into the wall behind me as I stared at the row of pipes in front of me. I don't know what I did before, I said nervously as I looked around, my breathing growing uneven and rushed as I struggled to stay calm. This level is a new one, too. I don't know how to survive, I choked as I staggered to my right, gripping my combat knife tightly as I stumbled into the darkness. Sounds of creaking pipes and settling machinery surrounded me as I began to run, sprinting down the cramped brick hallway as I pushed myself as far as I could and to any hopes or ideas of escape. The sound of fast-moving air filled my ears as I ducked, barely avoiding a low-hanging exhaust port as burning steam exploded out of the exit valve, the boiling mist singeing the hairs on the back of my neck as I stumbled forwards. My feet fell over... Damn, I lost my place. My feet fell over each other as I ran into the wall, falling forwards before crashing into the ground. My elbows stung painfully as pain shot through my arms and up my neck. I winced, the waves of pain crashing into me over and over again as fresh scrapes and cuts surfaced on my arms and knees. I climbed to my feet, using the metal pipes lining the walls as support as I held my knife at the ready and continued to run. I need to get out of this hallway, I said sternly as I glanced behind me. The pipes groaned as another cloud of boiling steam exploded from the exhaust port just a few feet away from me. The hot mist burned my skin as it brushed against my shirt, making me cry out in pain. I need to leave this hallway, I cried as I stared straight ahead, my feet slapping the concrete floor as I ran as fast as I could in one direction. The hallway began to widen before abruptly ending, branching off to the right as the dead end blocked anyone hoping to go straight. A door. Is that a door? I said, exhausted from the running I just did as I gasped for air. My lungs burned as I grabbed the door handle and pushed through, entering a new area. The air was freezing cold and felt heavy and claustrophobic. A new area? I mumbled as goosebumps spread along my forearms and biceps. It's so cold, I said, shivering as I held my combat knife in my right hand. But it's something, I said as I began to walk across the empty room. The walls of the area were made up of cracked gray brick and the floor consisted of a sheet of cold concrete. Thin, gray concrete pillars occasionally sprouted up from the floor as they connected the ground and the ceiling. A row of dim, pale white lights lined the ceiling as a mass of black rods supported the roof. The air was cold and heavy, and a thin fog filled the area. Faded gray pipes lined the walls and stretched from the floor to the ceiling as generators littered the corners. This place seems neat, I muttered as I looked around while I walked. The sounds of my shoes on the cold concrete echoed down the chamber as I scanned the walls and floor for resources or hints of escape. It's got nothing in it, though, I muttered as I glanced behind me. The only visible door was the metal gate I had entered the sector in, the rusted metal bars having closed back over the hallway as they locked behind me. I turned to face what was ahead again and froze in my tracks. One of the scratcher entities from the level I barely escaped from was aimlessly wandering around a couple of feet away. Shit, not again, I muttered as I darted behind a thick concrete pillar. The scratcher seemed to detect my movement as it dragged its claws on the concrete, slowly wandering over towards me to investigate. I glanced at the combat knife in my hands and hesitated, not knowing if it would actually work. It's worth a try, I said to myself as I peered around the pillar, getting a quick look at the creature before darting back behind the safety of the pillar. It's really dangerous, though, I said as feelings of dread and anxiety began to wrap around me, crushing any hopes I had left. Now or never, I muttered as I jumped out from behind the pillar. I held the knife in an attack stance as I stared at the creature, watching as it instantly locked its targeted attacks on me. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, I said as I ducked, the creature's claws flying over my head as they obliterated the concrete pillar beside me. Debris and metal shrapnel exploded outwards, chunks of concrete covering the floor as I leapt back. The scratcher's attacks just barely missed, its claws just barely missing my stomach as I hit the ground hard. The air was knocked out of me as my tailbone grew sore from the impact of the fall. That wasn't a good idea, I said as I scrambled to my feet. The scratcher took its claws deep into the concrete, sharpening them again for another round of attacks. Move! I cried as I jumped to the left, just barely dodging a sudden attack as I rolled on the concrete, my combat knife almost flying from my hands as I hit the ground hard. I scrambled to my feet, my hips and arms already bruising as I began to run. The scratcher growled, sending chills through my body as I sprinted past the terrifying black creature. The scratcher's claws whistled as they flew past my ear, almost clipping my shoulder as I ducked, avoiding another attack. Definitely not a good idea, I cried as my feet slid on the concrete, my shoes almost losing traction as I darted right. The scratcher's claws dug deep into the concrete as it sharpened its claws once more, continuing to pursue its prey as it readied for another fatal blow. I pumped my legs as I struggled to avoid the bringer of death that was hot on my heels, darting just around concrete pillars as I tried to make my way to the end of the hall. Just find an exit, I cried as I leapt to the right, catching air as the scratcher's claws shattered the concrete, cracked spiderwebbing outwards as I obliterated a chunk of the floor. Preferably now, I cried as I screamed as I landed on the ground running. Shit, I keep hearing shit behind me, dude. What the fuck? I screamed as I landed on the ground running, things seeming to move in slow motion as I grasped for air. The sounds of the scratcher's claws scraping on the concrete pierced my ears as I spotted the door. Sorry I'm reading so fast, by the way. It's just so fast-paced, so I kind of speed up. Sorry. Just make it to the door, I said sternly as I listened to the creature behind me. The sounds of movement had almost completely vanished as I began to turn around, not looking to see where I was going as I slammed into a concrete pillar. The air was knocked from my lungs as I hit the ground. The air was knocked from my lungs as I hit the concrete hard. At least I didn't mess up until 16 minutes. Usually it's like 2. The air was knocked from my lungs as I hit the hard concrete beam with my entire left side, my body bouncing off as I crashed to the ground. I rolled on the floor before coming to a stop against the door. My lungs and head... Fucking hell, dude. My head spun as my lungs screamed for air. Shit, I said weakly as I watched the scratcher quickly approach my location. I held the combat knife tightly in my hand as I fumbled for the doorknob, pulling myself up using the metal pipes around the door as I scrambled to my feet. Shit, I said repeatedly as I fumbled with the lock, struggling to push the door open as the creature quickly approached, claws at the ready for the final blow. Fucking open! I screamed at the top of my lungs as I yanked open the door. Sorry, it's like 10 o'clock at night, I can't scream. I yanked open the door, the lock breaking off as I threw the door open and darted inside. The door shutting behind me as the monster crashed into the solid wall with pure anger and bloodthirsty rage, the sound of everything around me fading as it all went black. Get ready for the abandoned office soon, boys. Coming out on July 9th. You ain't ready for it.